Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is August 14th, 2025. Yes. I am James Jones. I'm joined today by Mr. Greg Lay.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
I got really worried there when there was that pause. I'm like, oh no, am I all alone?
It's probably just a connection a little bit.
We talked about this last week, but John and Guillaume are out this week. I believe John comes back next week, so we're not going to be stuck in this cycle of no one's here. But we have this week, and Greg and I had some business to handle. And this business dates back to March, but it has continued to expand as time has gone on. So this is episode 938, I should mention. We both played Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. We were a little bit kind of waiting to see if John would pick it up because he did play Xenoblade Chronicles X extensively. He has told me explicitly he does not plan to play it. So, okay, cool. So we needed an opportunity to do a spoiler cast. If you will recall, it's been over 10 years at this point. We did a Xenoblade Chronicles X spoiler cast, which was done based on the Wii U version of the game. That, of course, has the infamous Chapter 12 cliffhangers, plural. And we spent a lot of time talking about that. Chapter 13 in Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition addresses those cliffhangers. We'll talk about how we feel about it. But if you have not played Definitive Edition and would like to and don't want to have the contents of it spoiled, or maybe you don't like to and don't want to have the contents spoiled, I don't know, it's your call. You could probably punch out of this episode for now. Because this is pretty much all we're going to talk about. There might be stuff in here that's not spoilers, but it's pretty much fair game at any point in the conversation to just mention stuff that happens. And, besides me just asking Greg, how's it poppin'? Real actual spoilers. So, if you are
given how much longer it took me to get to the point where, I encountered that phrase and finished the game, I suppose my appropriate response to that question should be slowly but surely.
Oh, it's not the right response. And now I'm going to be out and really mad about that.
Well, he would be, yes, but it's true. I got there in the end. It took me a while, but I did get it. I don't think it was as fast as when I was playing the Wii U version to get to the end. But still, full portability definitely kind of expedited the process a little bit, I'd say. Of course, we should mention there is some original content that is not just backloaded to Chapter 13 as well. There's something you can access earlier that I'm sure we'll kind of touch on.
Oh, definitely. They introduced new playable characters. I said introduced new playable characters because one of the characters was technically already in the game. They just are now recruitable. So if this is you, hey, guess what? This episode, I think, is going to come out around Saturday. Which is a ridiculous statement because the only person who's going to hear this before that happens is Greg and myself.
But I mean, if it is on Saturday, yes, that would be the 16th of August, and that would be 10 years to the day, I believe, of the published date of your first episode as full-time host.
Oh, God.
And it is fitting because, as we touched on this last week, but 2015... yes, Xenoblade X came out right at the end of that year for us, and where we talked about it a lot, and then going into 2016 as well. Obviously, long game, and it took us a while to kind of work through. But what we've got to remember about it is that it came out several months earlier in Japan.
It did.
There was a kind of interesting situation there, and so but I can remember before you took over as host, Saran coming on the show with Johnny and talking about extensively about her experience with the Japanese version. So 2015 very much was the year of Xenoblade X because it got kind of multiple, especially with the not exactly overflowing rest of the software lineup that was the essentially end of life Wii U scenario and the 3DS kind of just trundling along. That was like the game of that year, so it feels right to be coming back to it now.
It's also interesting that we're doing this as part of a two-part sequence because it was 466 we did our retroactive, our Spoilercast on Xenoblade X, but actually it was episode 466 part 2. because we published it in 2 chunks for exactly the same reason. I didn't even remember that until just now when I went to go find what the episode number was. However, this time we're not going to do that. I said that this week's episode was 984, or 934. A few days after this episode comes out, so if it comes out on Saturday, the 10-year anniversary of that, or if it comes out on Sunday, it could be one of those 2 days. A few days later, we will drop an additional episode, and that episode will actually be numbered 937, because the whole part 2 thing fucks with all the file formats and shit we do, and like it's a fully autonomous episode. I may as well just give it its own number. 937 is a spoiler cast of what I'm referring to as the Donkey Kong Bonanza 100%ers Club, which is the 2 people on this show who have 100%ed Donkey Kong Bonanza. Also, the 2 people on the show who have played Donkey Kong Bonanza. It's kind of weird because all 4 of us have Switch 2s, but it is what it is.
Also, I guess, what could you say? Interesting that, if in terms of number of people who've played it, number of people who've 100% in it, it is 100% ratio there. So, it shows you that it compels people to finish it. Absolutely, apparently. I don't know how common that will actually be across a bigger sample size than 2.
Yes.
At least in our case, we were driven to get over that particular line.
But this gives us the sort of a free hand to just talk about whatever we want to talk about. Because, there's a lot of stuff in that game that is really like getting to experience that level and see the weird stuff going on is part of the fun. So like,
would you consider it like a hard spoiler? Maybe it's debatable, but I think, to some extent it's kind of safer siloed a little bit, because definitely you're discovering the stuff, that's there, even if it's not something that's orthodox, like plot things,
right,
or a strategy to beat a boss or what. It is still, I think, could fairly be considered something of a spoiler, so it just kind of makes sense.
Yep. It'll give John and Guillaume a chance to play the game if they want, without us not having to hear us talk about things that they may not want to hear. Give listeners a chance to come back to it once they have joined the 100%ers Club, or have decided they have no interest in going there and just like, whatever, I'll just listen. So that'll come out, let's say 3 or 4 days after this episode came out. So 2 opportunities for me to write dumb bullshit in articles, so you can look forward to that as well. But yeah, let's with all the warning out of the way, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition came out in March, correct? March, I want to say it's 13th? Yep. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I forget exactly where it was. Somewhere just sort of in the middle there, right? Not long before the little bit of an odd choice for that kind of end of the fiscal year. Not quite Animal Crossing in terms of its commercial sort of capacity, although that is not necessarily the case with Nintendo that often either, is it? It's kind of, for a lot of software companies, it will be stuff that's been delayed a bunch of times, and then it's like, look, it can't get out of this fiscal year, so it's going to be March, right? With Nintendo, that has happened. I think it's fair to say the original Switch's launch was very much a case of like, we've got to get this train rolling, to have an impact, before the end of that particular fiscal year. Of course, you contrast that with, Switch 2, whereas like, we don't really need to like fit this into like that particular window because we're still doing so much better. So
right.
Why you kind of box yourself in that way. But so there's plenty of years where Nintendo has a game in March and it's not necessarily something that they expect to single-handedly retrieve their, sort of fiscal results for that period. And certainly, Xenoblade X was not going to achieve that. But again, because the Wii U was so moribund in general, but also specifically at the time that, especially the localized version came out at the end of 15, it's just nice for it to get this chance, to be experienced, even if it's not by millions upon millions of people, a bigger audience than what it had before.
Yeah, and undoubtedly it did, because boy, did it not sell on Wii U. So I think we both got through the the original 12 chapters relatively quickly. I mean, because
it's nice.
That's a lot of game. It's a lot of game.
It took a while, because it's just I wasn't like rushing too much. I definitely wasn't of the attitude. I get on multiple levels. On the one hand, I wouldn't say that I was in a mindset of like, God, I've got to get to chapter 13 as quickly as possible. I've got to know what happened. I've been waiting 10 years. What's happened? I've got to go. Like, that was not the idea at all. I wanted to, enjoy replaying the game first and foremost, with the proper portability, with the better, kind of graphical fidelity now, especially, having played so much of it on the gamepad, remote play sort of thing. It's a big upgrade. And I mean, it's a big upgrade, as I've said before, on the other Xenoblade games on Switch. Image quality wise, everything about it is just, it feels so much better than they did, to look at and everything. So I wanted to take my time and enjoy replaying the game, and it had been a lot of years, so it's not like my working knowledge of the whole thing was that, exquisite that I could just race through it. And I definitely sort of kept track of, how much the survey rate, and I kind of wanted it, and not quite as like, specifically as I think I did with Bonanza, where I kind of like said, okay, I'm going to at least get to 2/3 or 70% until I move on. But it was a similar notion, right? Of like, any particular region, I want to kind of at least drag that survey rate up to something respectable and this kind of thing. So, I didn't rush through it, but I made decent progress with that. And then, of course, you hit chapter 13, and then that itself has different, quite different sort of sub chapters to it.
Oh yeah, it's got 3. So I basically did what I did the first time I played the game, which is I essentially just cleared all the content I could find before I continued the story. I did that through the first 12 chapters, and I did that in 13. Now, I did a better job because I know a lot of the content. So if there's something that I remember doing the first time I played it, but I hadn't triggered it, because there are things that are just posted for you to find. There are things where there's just an icon on the map to find, like they're there. The game wants you to find them. There are things that are triggered by you doing something, but there's no indicator anywhere that that's going to happen. You just have to stumble into it. A good example is the whole pizza bomber case. It's not on any map. Like, you just have to...
No, that's true. Yeah, and that I'd say, because like everything's a bit more like user friendly than it was the first time round. It was kind of like a surprise to me that when I finally did run into that, I kind of realised, like, yeah, that's not telegraphed at all. Like, virtually everything else is, but there are other examples. But like that one is just like you are organically going to hit that spot in New LA. And it's going to start, or it is not going to breadcrumb you to it. You are not going to get given a quest or a task at headquarters, which is going to prod you there. It's just got to happen, right?
And it's not in a spot that you're likely to spend a lot of time in, because it's basically just set dressing over in that corner of New LA. Like there's not much going. It's over near New LA's only tall building.
They probably did even like more fast traveling and stuff around spots with the Switch version, because it loads faster and stuff. Like it just, I feel like I did much more of that. Just like, okay, just take me to where I need to go, kind of thing.
And in that specific case, like I recognized around chapter 9, I hadn't seen it yet, and I'm like, what the fuck? I know it happened by now because I remember getting it really early after we had all the relevant races here. And I looked it up, and it's like, oh, because I've never walked over there. I haven't had any reason to. There's nothing over there. So I just been warping around. I walked over there and triggered it and did the whole thing. And that one, because I remembered it, because it is like it's actually multiple quests stacked on top of each other. And look, I mean, the whole premise is that people are dying from pizza, Manon specifically. And there's a Manon detective who's decided to join Blade, and it's very stupid. But also it's this hard-boiled detective thing, and then the end involves both the phrase "move out, deploy that pizza," and a guy murdering people because his wife died from overwork from making pizza, which, again, because it's the spoiler cast, I can just say that doesn't make any fucking sense. She's a mimiosome. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
It just immediately is like, what the fuck do you mean she overworked to death? She's a robot. Just go repair her. What are you talking about? Yeah, like it's an insane plot line. It's truly like Xenoblade X being it's almost Dr. B level stupid. And like that's
I guess it's one of those thought experiment type of things that just kept going, you know, right. About like that, because the thing of the Manon being absurdly obsessed with pizza is a broader like subplot, I guess, if you want to call it that. So, yeah, that's in a whole bunch of quests that it references there.
Right, they're bought off with pizza. They're like they give weapons.
The kind of
for
politicking
pizza.
With the other races, all that it ties. It's not siloed to this, but you kind of feel like, okay, so that was probably a subplot, and then it's like someone's thought experiment. Like, well, what could we do with it? Like, how could this be something other than just kind of like a punchline? Because there is a lot of that in Xenoblade X, where it's like, okay, certain characters either are entirely like one joke, you know, or they at least have a kind of gag associated with them that they'll just keep going back to. Right. And, you know, for the Manon as a race, like the pizza is the joke, right? But then it's kind of like, well, what if it was more than a joke in this case? What if we actually took it places? And yeah, that's the whole idea of like, oh yeah, well, you know, it sounds funny, right? They're just so voracious that they eat all this pizza. But think about the dark side of that. Think about the poor buggers that have to make the pizza. You know, I mean, you know, they're going to work themselves to death making pizza. But the thing is, it's a fine thought experiment. It doesn't actually fit into the premise, as you mentioned, because they're not natural people.
Right. And the Manon actually make a comment about it in the context of pizza, where they're like, we don't know why y'all make such good food. You're robots. And it's like, you got a good point. You're right. Why did we make robots that have to eat? We do actually get an explanation for that. They thought it would be good for the mental health of the crew, which is a dumb phrase.
Yeah. It's hand wavy. It is kind of silly. On the other hand, I guess there's a lot of other stuff like that, like the pets and the, you know, so it's like, and they are all in this absurdly pressurized, sort of traumatizing scenario of, you know, your home planet's dead, everyone's dead. You're the last, almost everyone, you know, you're the last hope of ever preserving any sliver of humanity somewhere in the universe. And you've been hunted by these, you know, sort of seemingly very highly motivated aliens to wipe you out of existence. It's just like, yeah, maybe you do need some slivers of normality, however like artificial they actually are.
Yeah, but it's like, okay. So, all right, fine, whatever. Everybody's eating pizzas. I don't care. That's great. It's the only functioning restaurant on this goddamn city. But all right, whatever. But then, like, but to your point, like, all right, it was a thought experiment that went crazy. It's some genius coined the phrase "move out, deploy that pizza," which I'll still say 10 years later, just apropos of nothing, and no one knows what the fuck I mean because nobody played this game. But it's truly a It's one of those things where, like, oh, there's just weirds. The more you engage with Xenoblade X, there is a mix of, we're going to world build. And there's actually some really effective world building in some of the quests where it's like, they've built up this culture, this heterodox culture of lots of different races that are effectively being dragged in together. But they're also giving you these character study little mini stories. There was some debate in the NWR Discord. I went back into the Xenoblade Spoilers channel just sort of prep myself for this conversation. There was some debate around some of the characters that are in there. And we had a fairly long debate around, I can't remember what director Choson, who, as Elma points out at the very beginning, he gave himself that title while she was out of New LA just long enough to go get you. Like, he created and gave himself the director general title or whatever he calls himself. Like, the most powerful man. And somebody else cracks back, he'll be dictator by the end of the week or something like that. Because like we get this long, kind of like slow arcing revelation of his character of like, yeah, he'll fucking do whatever it takes to amass power. But he's doing it because he believes he has to in order to deliver humanity and all this other crap.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty early on. It's sort of trying to set something up there where it's like, okay, they want the player to kind of be suspicious of him.
Right.
You know, so like, so, well, you know, when there's the question of, you know, is there kind of essentially a mole in New LA that's cooperating, you know, with their adversaries? Could it be him? You know,
right.
That kind of thing. And to some extent, anybody who's like a sort of essentially, you know, a politician at the high level in these sorts of stories is always going to be a little bit suspicious. So why not lean into it? You know,
yeah.
Kind of thing. But then, you know, not actually go there in the end, you know, and have him actually be some sort of, you know, the completely unscrupulous guy that'll sell out everybody else to you know, save his own skin or something.
He does flex power, but there is like, but again, as they built his character study over lots of side stories, many of which aren't his. They're like other people's side stories. He just sort of passes through. You do get to see a side around him that like, okay, yes, he will. This is a man who has adopted the ethos of never waste a disaster, never waste a crisis. Like any crisis I can leverage to gain a little bit more authority and a little bit more responsibility and a little bit more unrestrained power is a good thing for the ultimate goal. Which he actually does believe in the ultimate goal. So there is like, okay, so maybe him amassing this power isn't great because it's quite clear the rest of the thought leadership of the White Whale, which would be Elma, which would be, I can't remember what the name of the captain is, who's now in charge of Blade.
Naki and
Vandam. Yeah. Like that trio obviously don't like him very much. Like they're constantly sort of feuding with him, but he's positioned himself as overlord of everything. So there's a certain amount of like, well, we just have to do it. And like anytime we talk about new races, it's not like, well, we should rescue them because it's the right thing to do. He goes like, you know, they're going to have sick weapons. It's like, yeah, you're right. Yes, buddy. They're going to have good weapons. You're right. But can we talk?
And it's quite, you know, obviously fitting in with the whole sort of quite strange. For this kind of material, like with the sci-fi, you know, and you know, quite fantastical kind of sci-fi scenario at that. You know, the sort of economic philosophy of the game, you know, where we've got all these different arms manufacturers, and he, as I recall, Chassan is quite enthusiastic about the idea of trading with these people. You know, that it's basically it's going to be good for the new LA economy. It's quite funny that was actually sort of put into the plot.
And like to a certain degree, I get it, because the idea is that these are essentially the seed colonists, and then we're going to, and keep in mind, he would have known everything. Like he was on the inside. There are maybe 5 people truly on the inside of what the reveal in chapter 12 is, which is that New LA, like the whole time we've been told that our bodies are in suspended animation. With the exception of Cross, which we'll talk about again. I want to talk about that again. We talked about it in the first Spoilercast. I know a lot more now. But like we're told, like these bodies are in suspended animation. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of civilians who aren't part of the crew, who aren't part of Blade, who haven't been woken up yet, because we don't need them right now. Leaving them frozen is the best thing we can do for them, but we have to get to the ship before the clock runs out, or they're gonna die. And we're going to die because our bodies are still on that ship. Like that's the whole Lifehold like mystery in a box. There is this device that our bodies are currently living in, and we are remotely controlling these robots. And then there are many, many, many times that number of people who we need to get ready. So the idea that he's going to prepare an economy and a society so that people can live there, that makes a certain degree of sense as they start to unfreeze people. But he knows better. Because what we find out in chapter 12 is there are no bodies on that ship. There's one, it's Elma's. There is a single body on that fucking ship. Everyone else is protoplasmic goo.
Do you think Elma's physical body is there just so it can be technically true, the best kind of true or whatever?
I took it to mean so.
Well, there was one person that was there, so you know, wasn't the biggest lie.
I took it more because she has different DNA. Because she is an alien. Now, we find out she's more related to the Earth in Chapter 13 than we thought, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it was maybe like the big vat of protoplasm that they have assembled wouldn't be able to spit out an Elma. Granted, it can spit out other animals because it does do that in the Chapter 12 boss fight, so I don't know.
Indeed, bizarre, hybrid, sort of nightmare creatures that should never exist as well. Right. But I guess that's not really proof of anything good.
No. But, the other thing to keep in mind is Lao, our traitor. We actually find the traitor. It's Lao. The game telegraphs it pretty early. He basically disappears in Chapter 6.
Oh, yeah, no, it's true. It does. I feel like that's almost like a double kind of, kind of red herring or something in terms of it's making you suspect Lau early enough that you're like, okay, well, it won't actually be him then.
But no, it is totally him.
It's got to be we put him under suspicion now so that we can kind of do a swerve later, and it's this other. But in fact, no, it is just.
So the idea that Lau is just gone, it's oh no, actually he's really the guy. In playing it the second time, it's even more obvious that he's totally the guy. But his whole motivation for his betrayal was that not the crew of the White Whale, because there was. I'm gonna talk about it because it's really dumb. I'll get to it in a second. But the passengers, the alleged passengers, were largely picked based on favors and who what you know. It wasn't based on who is the best candidate. It wasn't based on who is sacrificing the most. It was just purely a function of, do you know someone who can get you a ticket on this ship?
Yeah, the lifeboat sort of scenario, right? So it's and again, I guess it's the issue is this, isn't it? Is when it's actual physical bodies, you're thinking about the scarcity of that a lot more. Right, so it's okay, this notion of how many people can we get on this thing, and then who decides the specific people that can get on based on that small number. Right, it kind of makes sense. But then when we discover what actually happened, it's a lot more
So, they don't say it, but I firmly believe there are a lot more digitized consciousnesses in that fucking computer than they were telling there are bodies in the thing. But from the standpoint of motivating people to action, because keep in mind, the motivating factor is we need to get there before the bodies die. The people in the know, of which there are 5, Elma didn't even tell her crew. Her tightly bound party of personally selected associates, which is 2 people. She didn't even tell them. One of them is Lynn, who worked on the fucking project, and one of them is Cross, who conversation happened in a minute. So lying about it's entirely possible Lau's family's digitized consciousness is in that fucking computer, and they just didn't tell him because that would have given away the game that there are no bodies to save. It's just fucking data, and and that they had lied to them, and that actually we don't have your bodies, because the fear, and they said it, was that people would be demotivated by the fact their bodies aren't actually there. That no, you actually did fucking die. Your body died on Earth. You are not alive anymore. Congratulations, you're just data. And they handle that in 12. They actually touch on it a little bit more in 13, which is one of the things they actually do loop back to. 13 is weird, and that it doesn't loop back to a lot of stuff that you might expect it to. But in 12, they do touch on it, the idea of, well, we didn't tell people this because if your body's gone, are you even real anymore? And Lau has a weird philosophical discussion on this in Chapter 13. But what we find is that the end of 12, when the whole system's been shut down the whole time we're here, it's been flooded. What happened? We find out that in 13, this is the one thing that they truly loop back on, is that they built this thing, the Lifehold, with technology they don't have. This is not Earth technology being put into place. This is stuff that was brought to them by Elma, who herself doesn't understand this technology because her people are also descendants of the Samarians, which, if you recall from your Xenoblade lore, they were the progenitor race, because you can't have a big sweeping sci-fi narrative that crosses galaxies if you don't have a progenitor race. It's a requisite. They are the creators of two other races, the Zolbragan, the Poison Eaters, and the Ganglion, who are their enforcers. We actually get some refinement on that in 13 as well. But they created these races, these that are essentially just embedding their DNA in other races as essentially successor species, in different dimensions, we find out, in Elma's species and in Earth, which is why Elma ends up at Earth, because she is the same. And they recreated technology from this progenitor race, not really knowing what it does, a little bit like Contact. And suddenly she finds herself on Earth, and with all this shit that they don't understand, again, like Contact, and they just build it. They just build what they're told to build. And when it fails, all the consciousnesses are still in the mimeosome, because transhumanism, ? But we find out the exact same thing is happening with the Vita, that giant mech that they stole in chapter 8, I think, and held on to until very near the end of the game, that the Ganglion were super interested in because it has their god in it. It's the same deal. His spirit from beyond reality is buried in that thing's consciousness being projected in. So essentially they recreated that same fucking technology and didn't know what they were doing, and that explains why actually the Lifehold computer didn't matter. None of it matters. That's the one thing that actually really explained. The Lifehold's computer didn't matter because that wasn't what was actually doing anything. It was there to recreate bodies, and that's it. Now, do they say it explicitly? No. They give you all the little pieces, and then they're like, oh, by the way, this is just like the Vita, isn't it? This is just like the Vita. Yeah. So like there is actually stuff here. It does thread back. But it's such a weird, like, there's a weird storytelling component here where the game is presented episodically. But if you just played the episodes, they wouldn't really make a lot of sense. Or they'd feel very threadbare. It's building out these characters, even somebody like Tatsu, who you talked about, like he is a mix of, he has one joke, which is that he doesn't want to be eaten, which, I mean, who amongst us? And the other one, that he is infatuated with Lyn. I think that's the only way I can describe it. Which is weird because Lyn's the one who wants to eat him. And that he's a coward. Like, that's the other thing. He's a coward. But that's it. Like, that's Tatsu. Like, that is Tatsu defined. He is functionally a coward. He's kind of stupid. He's not as stupid as he comes off. He's kind of stupid. He doesn't want to be food, which, again, who amongst us? And he does at times address Lindley. I want to say that he one time he refers to her as like his wife or something weird like that. Just weird. Like, those two are in like some fucking weird conversation bubble happening. Lyn is also essentially a two-part joke. She's crazy smart. Her parents are responsible for this whole monstrosity of a project. And, she's kind of a bully. Like, that's like, she bullies people, like adults that she interacts with, other blades. What's the name of the test pilot? I'm blanking on his name now. Shoot, I should have written that down. That's all right. I'll remember it later. She bullies other people, like Doug. She bullies Doug and Gwyn. Everyone bullies Gwyn. Poor Gwyn. Poor fucking Gwyn. This came up, I said we we're going to come back to it. This came up in the Discord, or they're like, one person, and I'm going to call him out, said, I don't like what they did with Gwyn's chin in the remake. It's too masculine. He's supposed to be a bumbling fool. And it's like, no, he's a Blade. Everybody in Blade was picked because they're really, really good. These are like the elites of the elite. It just happens that Gwyn is like the least elite among the most elite. It is unfair to him. It is like being the best basketball player or the worst basketball player on an NBA roster. You're still really fucking good at basketball. you're just standing next to goddamn Elma and looking like a fucking chump. But I mean, this is the same organization that hired HB. So, like, what the fuck do I know? Like, Jesus Christ, what a terrible organization in general. Just awful. I don't know. Like, do you spend a little bit of time on the characters, the new characters?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's got obviously you've got the new character and the new kind of type of skell as well. That ties into it. The kind of jet skell, which is something that is a nice addition to it. I guess some of it is because technologically they have the ability to kind of traverse the world faster without the game falling to bits on Switch the way it might have done on Wii U. So yeah, you get the opportunity to use that and cover a lot of ground. In fact, certainly I ended up using it a lot in the kind of new area in chapter 13, even though it's not that vast, but it was just a lot. You kind of crisscrossing that last area, looking for different things, as the scenario kind of dictates. And yeah, it just made it like a lot sort of more convenient using that jet scale, because, like, for instance, say you might get yourself into a battle which you didn't want to be in because you're just kind of trying to scan the area, as it were. It's so easy to just flip into that jet mode and get away from an enemy without it taking too long. So you just get the very first few bars of that battle theme in the new area, and then it fades out
just gone
quickly when you jet away from that. So yeah, that whole kind of thread with how again, like, tying back into the kind of the corporate side of the story, the company that's actually designing that line of skells, and the sort of corrupt leadership there and all that. Yeah, it's kind of that's one of the things that starts kind of sooner than the end. But yeah, I definitely ended up using it a lot towards the end.
I didn't really use the jet scale that much because I was building like the Amadusius, which has extra boosts on like fiery skills, and then using, I can't remember what the name of the ultimate weapon is, the one that just projects a wall of fire in all directions, because that would clear like 80% of the battles in one shot, and it's just like, the battle's over. So I also only heard like 3 bars at the expense of my fuel. Because I just pressed a button and everything fucking died. And then when I eventually traded it out, it was for one of the super skell. Actually, no, it was for the upgraded version of that. And then eventually I moved on to the Ares. But the jet ones, I only used it a couple times, and yeah, they were interesting. It didn't feel very great because, I mean, the game was obviously not meant to be. This is the same thing with the Zelda bike. Like, the game wasn't meant to have a mechanism of travel that fast. It's like
it's not as severe because at least with the Switch version, it's the Switch version of the game. There's more considered. Whereas with the Master Cycle, it was DLC, right? So it's like, well, they made the game and then they put this in as a bonus that doesn't quite work. And it's similar because the game is, apart from the unique area in the end of chapter 13, it was made for Wii U, but at least there's been some adaptations in terms of how quickly they can spawn things into the environment and all that kind of thing, and the draw distance or whatever. So it's not like it breaks it, but it is useful. But I could definitely see how it's like, it doesn't necessarily fit like a glove either.
The world wasn't built for it, essentially. Now, you're right, it is useful though if you just want to zip across the sky, but like for anything other than an escape mechanism, like, I have fast travel, like, I'll just use that. I would occasionally just fly, like, especially if I'm headed to from like Primordia to one of the continents that's very close. I might just fly, or if I'm headed back to New LA from a mission, I might just fly it because it doesn't take that long. But yeah, with fast travel still would have been faster. It's like, it still would have been like, just go pop it. So I'm gonna say there are 5 new characters for me, and so when I say that, what I mean is, because there's 4, There's four new plays. All right, let me phrase this very carefully. There are 4 characters who are playable who were not playable in the original release of the game, including the DLC. So there's like a whole bunch of phrases that get thrown in there. Because in Japan, a bunch of the characters that were in the base game were DLC characters. In the West,
because of that several month gap that we talked about, is it, the localized version was incorporating a lot of that sort of work that had been done in a post-launch into it by then.
And in the last spoiler cast, the one we did 10 years ago, we talked about Yelv, who was one of those DLC characters, who it's revealed isn't a real person. There's no human mind behind Yelv. Yelv is a robot. Like, it's with fake memories. Like, they don't say it explicitly, but they do show you a whole stack of Yelv bodies to be put into the thing, and somebody talks about how his memories aren't real, and the friend he's trying to find never existed, and also fucking Eleonora is overseeing his case file and reporting up to somebody in charge. This feels like a Shosan role about what's going on with Yelv. Also implying there's another test case for this of a Blade who doesn't have any memory and was discovered wildly in a capsule by himself with no other capsules around. Just happens to be Cross, who she notes is palling around with Yelv, almost as if Yelv was created to be the test bed for it or something. I don't know. Who can say? But it would explain a lot with Cross if Cross is the same as Yelv. Do they ever say that? No. Do they hint at it? A little bit. But
I guess it's just like it's interesting 2 parts of the same experiment, right? In terms of the idea of like, okay, if we have, can we have these kind of mimeosomes that are not driven by a existing preserved consciousness? Is it better to give them grounding with these fake memories? Right. Or is it better for them to be a blank slate? So you could imagine that you, as Cross, and Yelv are like the two different strands of the same experiment, essentially. And Blade Runner, of course, is, something of a, kind of inspiration, I would imagine, for this kind of thing, because that's contained in there, where it's as well, most of the replicants don't have that. But then, the Tyrell Corporation has experimented with giving them memories. Sean Young's character in Blade Runner has been, and then that leads into the notion of, well, if that could be true for her, who else could it be true for? You know, and that whole kind of rabbit hole. So I assume that's part of what they're referencing there.
And it goes back to the why would they send Elma out to rescue a single pod? Why would they lie about how many people she brought back? Because again, Shosan never raised a crisis. The very first time we see him is him announcing they rescued 7 people, and everybody's like, "Oh, where's the rest of them?" I was like, "We didn't know. There was only one person. What is he talking about?" And the fact that this person who has no military experience, who they have no record of, because keep in mind, they know who's on the ship. They should know who you are and what your position was and what your skills are. They don't know any of that shit. Like, Elma doesn't know who you are at all. And suddenly you're on her team? It's like, that's very weird. That A, they don't know who Cross is. They can't just tell Cross, this is who you are, this is what you did. Because they keep going like, hey, do you remember anything about yourself? Maybe it'll come back later. Like they just found you on the side of a beach, like a random person. But no, like you were a member of the crew. Like you were allegedly in an escape pod when the ship came down. They should know who you are, right? Like there should be no mystery here. Everybody on board the ship was hand selected. So yeah, that whole fucking thing is a mess. And I bring it up again because you can go back and listen to the original Spoilercast. We get into it deeper. I picked up more of it this time because I was more geared for it. There's a lot of interactions with Elma where, one, she hints about what's going on, the shit that she knows that no one else does, that I didn't pick up before because obviously I didn't know them. And 2, that kind of hint back at this whole Yelv shit again. But the funny thing is, all that gets introduced as DLC in the game in Japan. What the hell? Like this is like one of the coolest mysteries in the game, and they're like, nah, it's DLC. It's the random throwaway DLC character that you'll never interact with. But I did, and the only reason I did it was because I loved that game so much. I wanted to get to know every single character, and I wanted to
and that is something that's not as kind of clear cut as like, okay, well, this character was not in the game at all before,
Right.
or, this character, was not recruitable before. But the changes they made to making it quicker to build affinity
so much faster
for characters, definitely changed how I ended up incorporating rotating people. Oh, well, and also just how much easier it is to actually go and put someone in your active party, because I'm sure we talked about this back in March or whatever, but the notion that you actually had to physically go to the spot in the LA where they hang out to get them in your party.
Assuming they're available right now, because sometimes they just wouldn't be.
It's nice that there is a place where they hang out, for just the world building thing of this is the job they do. This is the, particular sort of faction that they're with, and all that kind of thing. But in terms of just I want to put this person in the party right now, it wasn't very user friendly. So because they changed that, and because of the affinity build up being so much faster, I was juggling characters much, much more than I ever did in the Wii U version. And so it kind of felt like you got to know all of them a bit better as a result.
I maxed affinity on every character in the game, and I did all their quests.
Yeah, there obviously is one character that I didn't get to max affinity for because he permanently exits the recruitable space.
Yeah.
But other than that, everyone.
Which, knowing that this time, I made sure to do that as fast as I could.
No, I see. I bungled that a little bit. I guess I was a bit complacent. It was just I was close. I was really close, and it does go fast. I was like, oh yeah, I'll probably get up there, and then it's no.
I looked at how long.
It's on 4.5 hearts forever.
I looked at how long I had and said, okay, don't pick up that quest until Lau likes me. So I said 5 characters are new to me because I never found Mia. Despite the fact I played that game for 140 hours, I never realized Mia was recruitable. Mia is...
No, I didn't either. I mean, with the Wii U game, because it was just the thing is, it's a kind of... It's a little bit like some of these things that you get in sort of Donkey Kong Bonanza or Super Mario Odyssey, where you get a recurring kind of quest type for each new kingdom or layer. It's so in every continent in Xenoblade Chronicles, there's going to be a Mia quest where, you've got to... she's got herself in trouble and you've got to bail her out, basically. It's a recurring gag.
God damn it, Mia.
Of a quest every time, right? And it's just because some of the requirements for those to even trigger are quite kind of... especially the last one, I think.
Yes.
I probably just never triggered that it was accessible. I didn't even realize... really... I mean, I know there's not that many continents. There's not as many continents as there are layers in Donkey Kong Bonanza, but I should, if I'd really been thinking about it, it's come on, there's going to be another one, right? There's going to be another Mia quest for this region. So where is it? What's going on? Look it up if you have to. But I never did that the first time. But this time, because I was maxing out all the affinities and stuff, and kind of running that down, it was kind of doing all these quests. It happened more organically, and I ended up doing all the Mia quests, and then eventually you can recruit her, and then I did very, very quick because it was getting towards when I was ready to move into the extra chapter 13. That I finally added Mia. So then it was, okay, let's get this affinity up right quick before I sort of trigger, that end game phase, if you like. But again, didn't take very long because that's just the way it is, the way they changed it.
Yeah. The interesting thing about Mia is that you really can't recruit her until pretty late in the game because the place that you find her on Oblivia, you have to have done relatively late story stuff in order for her to be there. It's a very annoying quest where you're going after I think they're called the Delphinian Assassins, the ones the shapeshifters. And that mission just sucks. Yes. It sucks so bad. It's such a rough mission. But you have to clear it first, and then you can go back. Then she'll be there. So, after you go through this hellscape of no matter what level you are, there's so much fucking shit in that cave that you're going to have to be stealthy. The game just forces you to be stealthy because it just rains garbage on you. And then, the game's okay, now go back and get her. Because the only way you're going to know she's there is if you go back in that cave. And I'm why would I ever in a million years say, you know what I want to do? I want to go back in this godforsaken cave. The only reason I went back there was because somebody on the internet said, if you want a recruiter, this is where she is. And I went, you fucking kidding me? Seriously? God fucking damn it. All right, let's go back in that godforsaken cave. And that at that point, I was like level 80, and I just tore that fucking place to absolute goddamn shreds.
I guess that's one reason to go back in that cave. Is just like, well, let's see how much I could make it into a joke now.
Right. But it still takes forever because the cave is massive. And then she's like, can you get me some stuff? And I'm like, you want me to wander around this fucking cave to get you stuff to unlock you? I just took down a giant space station. Because remember, you have that fight against the giant, I don't know what they call it, the big floating station that's like much larger than a skell.
Yeah, I remember.
It's like, you're telling me I can't bust open a trailer? What? That's dumb. And it's like, fine, I'll go find your fucking key, you failure. And then I go, and she's like, hey, Chief, I want to join your party. And I'm like, oh, God damn it. All right, come on. But actually, like, I even liked her stuff. Like, her stuff's actually pretty good, and you get to see she's actually not bad. She's terrible as a blade when she starts, but by the end, like, some of her quests are actually pretty good. She's not bad. Like, she's good at like the like, that's the thing. Blade does everything. Blade does like banal shit, like settling fights in the middle of New LA because people don't have things better to do than to bicker over crap, or like, hey, can you get me some medical stuff? Again, you're robots. I don't entirely understand, but sure, whatever. I need to go slay a level 90 tyrant. Like, it's the full gamut. And she's pretty good at, like, the soft skill things. Like, some of her quests actually indicate that, you know, yeah, she made some promises that were much beyond her capability. That she just basically expects Cross and Co. to bail her out of. Like, she's like, oh, hey, boss, can you help me with this? It's like, you absolute jerk. Why? But she, you know, she actually is trying. She's like, there is a nice part about seeing a character improve. Like even though, like, these aren't real people, obviously, but like seeing her arc of, she wants to be a blade so bad, she's failed the test like 13 times for admission. This is the end of the world. I want to talk about this. This is the end of society. They need whatever bodies they can get, and she's so bad, the test instructor is like, no, I still won't give you a job. I'll give a man on a job before I give you a job. You are that big of a failure. To her getting a very significant mission at the very end of the game, where there's a lot of things going on that she handles pretty well, and she tries to do it without you. Do you end up bailing her out anyway? Yes, because it wouldn't be a Mia quest if you didn't. But, like, you get to see that arc. It's very nice. Not all of the
it is a little bit like, for a game that has so many kind of characters that it's the same gag again and again and again. It's kind of that with Mia, but there is actually a little bit of an arc there as well. Like, and that's, I guess, some of the kind of, so that's kind of the ultimate punchline, right? That it's, yes, you know, she's going to be kind of inept or out of her depth, and, you know, that's going to be the crux of a quest for that particular region, but there is some sort of payoff at the end of it, which is the notion that she has actually got more competent, and then it could be a recruitable, playable character. So it's for, you know, a game that has a lot of recurring I felt like that one actually paid off better than a lot of them do, or some of them don't really pay off. They just keep doing the same thing.
Fog is similar. Fog has a similar arc, although he's already in Blade. But he doesn't really pay off as well. Like, a little bit. Like, Fog does pay off a little bit. Like, it's like, okay, he does improve. His brother Fry is less of a dick to him. Like, okay, things get better between the two of them. Like, okay, that's fine. But, like, Bose never gets better. Like, Bose becomes less xenophobic, and the game's like, it's not nice to be xenophobic, Bose. Like, the game's ghost narrator is like, Bose, you shouldn't be a xenophobe. And, like, at the same time, I'm like, why shouldn't they? As far as Bose knows, they've only ever met 2 species of alien, and they blew up the Earth. Bose is absolutely justified in being a xenophobe. Like, this is a weird lesson to take, but what aliens does he know about? He knows about the ganglion, and he knows about what we now refer to as the void. Or what I can't remember what that race is called. Not even really a race. The null, or whatever they call themselves. The species that just erases reality, that we learned a lot more about in Chapter 13. That's it. That's the only aliens Bose ever knows he's met. The fact that he doesn't trust aliens really shouldn't be that shocking. He's kind of an outlier, and that's kind of weird. But don't worry, he's got plenty of faux Buddhism to give you anyway. But that's his gimmick. He's like, he loves Asian culture. He's going to talk to you about the Buddhist tantras now. And I'm like, I don't want to hear about that from you. Ever. Stop talking. Celica is a little bit of a one-note character, but I like her more. But to one of the new characters, Neilnail, who I think actually makes Celica better because their stuff's all intertwined. Celica is the only member of her race we meet in the original game, the Chlorians. All we know about them is they're vaguely humanoid. I think I saw that in the art book it's indicated Xenoblade Chronicles X, was originally under development, had a defined main character, like the regular Xenoblade games. It wasn't a created character. It was like, this is a story-driven character. They are the main character. They are in the party with Elma, but they are the focus. Right now, Elma is the focus of the game until Chapter 13. But she lets everybody in on all the secrets. Celica might have been intended to be like a love interest or like a protagonist tie-in. There's some weird stuff there. It always felt like she kind of existed but didn't really fit into the rest of the world. Like, she kind of got forgotten that she was there. Like, there was stuff that didn't involve her that she was pulled out of. But she's the only Chlorian we ever meet. All we know is that they are deeply, deeply, deeply devoted to that progenitor race again, whose name is now escaped, the Samarians. Although they aren't created by the Samarians. And that they are the ones who kept Samarian technology alive and spread it throughout the universe. Cool, whatever. And she has a friend named Rock, who's a big, large dude who doesn't want to hurt people. Who thinks that he has to fight to earn his keep. But just Sean's like, nah, you could just be a crane, bro. You could just move pipes around. That's fine. Again, never waste a crisis. And like, that's it. That was their whole character definition, is that she's basically an elf. And she has a nice song that plays anytime you walk around her. She's the only character who has that, which again hints that they might have had bigger plans for her at some point. Because she's the only character who has her own fucking song. And has no involvement in the plot at all. It's amazing. Neilnail is the same species as her. She is on a survey of alien worlds and winds up on the Mira hellscape. And it turns out she's like the leader of their race also. She's like the boss. And so Celica basically just follows her around. So all of Neilnail's quests become also character building for Celica. I actually really liked her because we got to learn more about Mira through her. Because she was able to go to some of these places, like in Oblivia, for example, where there's all these ruins. And she's like, oh, we built this. And it's like, pardon? She's like, oh yeah, this is our stuff. And it's like, did you know that? No, I can just look at it and tell. And then we find out that one of her predecessors just left 2 rogue skells on the planet and is like, if anybody comes here, fuck them up real good. And so the quest is go fight those things. And it's like, you know, Celica's always very demure, very quiet, very, if I can help, I would love to be of assistance kind of a character. Very soft-spoken, soft acting. Neilnail doesn't give a fuck. She's just like, let's go explore this thing. It's probably full of dangerous shit. And it's like, what? No, I don't want to do that. And then you're fighting a giant mech that she's dragged you to. And she's like, And she's just talking about how interesting this is. I'm like, it's not. That thing just fired a laser beam that killed Bose. And I kind of don't care, but I kind of need him right now. So if you could shut the fuck up about this while I go bring him back, I'd appreciate it. It was nice to see, like, okay, there's some depth to what that species is as well. We learn more about them. We learn more about the Samarians through her. We learn more about Mira through her. Like, she's a really nice addition to the plot because she does what a lot of the best side story characters do, which is they don't just sort of like enrich the interaction around that character. They enrich sort of the larger perspective of what's happening on the planet right now.
Yeah, kind of plug in some gaps in the world building. They probably felt like that were, like you said, it might have been a result of adjustments that were made to the scenario or whatever. But kind of looking back on the finished product and saying, how can we kind of fill in some of these gaps? And it's sort of a bit of an elegant way, I guess, of doing multiple things at once in terms of the kind of somewhat dislodged separate character. Integrating them more into the story and having more explanations of the bizarre nature of Mira, the sort of mix of technological stuff, architectural stuff, and geographical stuff that doesn't make sense, all trying to offer some kind of context for some of these things.
And it also goes back to, I can't remember who originally supposes it. It's in the first game. It's in the first release, where somebody said there is a thought that this might have been the Samarians' homeworld. Like this weird pocket planet might have been where they came out of. She's able to give a little more context. Like, Samarians were definitely here. This is definitely Samarian architecture that then the Chlorians came through and built on top of. And it's like, oh, okay, so that actually might be true. Like, that thing that she is that has been suggested might actually be real. This might actually be their planet. That might be why this planet is in this weird fucked up state it's in. Because we do find out things about the Samarians. We're like, oh, they could have put this planet in its own pocket universe to keep it safe if they wanted to. They have this kind of weird, like, universe warping technology. So, like, maybe they did do that. Liesel, who is a test pilot that we meet, she's not a Blade. She's one of the other new characters. I thought she was the weakest of the new characters. Like, her plot, as near as I can understand it, is basically, I really want to make this mech work. And it's the jet mech. And that's pretty much it, right? Like, do we get any
well,
other...
that's the thing. I think this one feels a little bit less elegant. Again, it's just like, okay, we've got this new kind of mech, this skell, that we want to put in the game because we can, presumably, technologically we can do this with the game on Switch, so we'll do it. But then, obviously the nature of the game, you've got to embed it in the story, so it does feel a little bit kind of like you said, one purpose. Whereas with the stuff with the Chlorians, that's more kind of embedded, kind of knit a few different things together rather. Whereas this is just we just want to introduce the new kind of skell, and she is, ironically enough, the vehicle for that.
Yes.
Like that, and that's pretty much her whole character. It doesn't really go beyond that, as what I can remember anyway.
Ga Jiarg, who was in the game, he is one of what is the name of their race? The cat people, the kitty Klingons.
Yeah, as the Rothians.
The Rothians, yes. He was there before, but he wasn't recruitable. So once you met the Rothians, they just kind of and you helped them escape the ganglion. They just kind of hang out in the cave, and you can get some quests from them, but that's basically it. They're just in this cave hanging out. And occasionally, one would wander into New LA and want to fight you because they heard you're strong, and again, like you said, they're the kitty Klingons.
They're Klingon. They are so
you are strong. Surprised. I want to fight you. It's like
I'm surprised they didn't give them some sort of substitute for Kaplar. To off whatever off-brand Kaplar is. Just to drive it home. That is very much the inspiration for this warrior cat race.
But Ga Jiarg, getting to know him a little bit, we actually get a pretty good feel for his character in the original game, because he does contribute to the downfall of the ganglion. He and his crew become active co-conspirators, and he does give you a lot of the background of their race through that process. You get a little bit more insight into him as well. But he's actually whereas the Chlorians, you get more insight on okay, this is how they operate. This is their culture. We had a lot of that because there are a lot of them around. And he's got his lieutenant love interest. I don't know what she is. They have a weird relationship thing as well. So we get a lot of interplay between them. We actually get to see him wander around New LA now, which is his weird obsession with human cats. He's fascinated by them. And he's just I watched this one hunt a mouse for 3 hours. And I'm like, bro, Don't you have anything better to do? Like, at all. Literally anything. That's not even a real cat. It's a robot. Why are you staring at it? I need you to pay attention. Focus. Focus right now. That having him be in the party actually softens him a little bit. You do get more information about how their society works, but guess what? They're Klingons. Like, it works like Klingon society. It's like, I want you to go look into this coming of age one of our race. He has gone off on a mission and has disappeared. This is his trial to become a man. Can you go find him? And sure enough, he's fighting something he can't beat. It's like, yeah, go figure. He's a fucking Klingon. We're going to go deal with this. We're going to go fight the monster, and then we will bring great shame upon him for having defeated the monster he was supposed to defeat. It's like, fuck off. He's not dead. I don't want to deal with this shit. You dumbass race. I'm not going to deal with this crap right now. I've got the universe to save. You are not my concern. But, like, you know, he fits in a little bit better because he was already there. It's just they've put more, like, texture on him. And then the last new character, which you don't get till chapter 13, and this is Mr. House at Poppin himself. This is Al. And Al, if I had to guess, and Greggy, we're going to get to chapter 13 properly now. If I had to guess, I'm going to guess Al was the original protagonist of this game. What do you think?
Yeah, you kind of feel like there's some sort of, like, adaptation at least of stuff somewhere, you know, an earlier concept, and it's, I get it. There was a little bit of it that reminded me, especially because I played this a lot more recently, I guess, than Xenoblade X itself, and also than the game that it connects to. But playing Torna and with Adam,
yes,
you know, with Adam, obviously you've heard about him a bit in the more than, you know, the kind of any allusions to this character in Xenoblade X. But, you know, then it's like, oh, well, you're actually seeing him, right? Like, there's a kind of a legend of this character, and then there's, you know, what he's actually like when you're up close and personal.
And I really like that, because in the main Xenoblade 2, the only person who doesn't talk about Adam reverently is Mithra. Mithra, when she talks about Adam, is like, he couldn't cook for shit. He burned everything. He was the worst. And then you meet him and you're like, oh, fuck, she's right. She didn't make any of that up. But I totally see that connection. Like,
it kind of felt like a similar dynamic to me. Like I said, some of it's the sequencing, right? Because I played Torna, like, you know, less than a year before. It was almost a year, I think, by the time we got to Xenoblade X. But, you know, it was relatively fresh in the memory. And it's kind of a similar thing of just, it kind of feels like, you know, okay, there's this character you've heard about, like you said, a lot of people do talk about him reverently, and then you actually see him, and he's kind of a dork.
Yeah.
Right? And I felt like there was quite a lot of overlap with kind of his relationship with Mithra. I felt like there was a certain, I don't know whether I'd say it was direct inspiration or not, but it kind of felt a bit like Anakin and Obi-Wan in the prequels, where it's like, okay, like Obi-Wan is a wise character, right, in the, you know, when he's Alec Guinness.
Right.
But when he's having a deal with Anakin, he can't do it when in episodes 2 and 3. Like, he's just a dork and he can't handle this, like, you know, precocious, more powerful than him character, but he's meant to be in charge of them.
Yes.
Like, there was a lot of that there with them. So it kind of, you know, it kind of worked for me, their relationship, and Adam, you know, being kind of not exactly what he's like cracked up to be, but, you know, it's still kind of, you know, the way everything kind of plays out in the story, like, it feels like it fits together. You know, it doesn't feel like a contradiction. I guess the problem with that, while it kind of reminded me a little bit of that, it doesn't, you know, with chapter 13 here, it does, and Al, it does kind of feel more like his importance has just, like, been teleported in without
with
you know, nearly as much groundwork, you know, going into it, of like, okay, actually, this you know, this character was actually way more important. Like, basically, he single-handedly saved them from getting completely destroyed, right? With the sort of the way that his skell can warp like in time and space or whatever.
He
so
is
like,
that technology
this
we were
was
talking
like
about that they rebuilt without knowing what it does.
Yeah, that whole thing is basically like, well, this was actually the most important part of like the whole escape from Earth and escaping the ganglion and everything, and you just didn't know about it, kind of thing, or mostly wasn't kind of like talked about up front or anything. It doesn't feel as connected to the base narrative the way that the stuff in Torna did.
Lynn touches on it in the opening narration, which, if you've forgotten, Lynn narrates the opening of Xenoblade Chronicles X, where she talks about how there was one skell who essentially held them off. We don't know who that skell was. We don't know who was piloting it. It felt like they were implying it was Elma. We find out through this, nope, it was Al. And Al wasn't piloting a normal skell. He was piloting the Ares. The Ares 90, which is a special Ares. Oh, no, his is just Ares. His is just pure Ares. The Ares 90 is based off of it. Which is effectively the... what is the name of the transformations in Xenoblade 3? It's essentially those, like because it's even got the orbs.
No, it looks so much like it, especially the very climax of Future Redeemed, where they essentially achieve the first time that it's ever happened.
Yes,
when it's like 6 of them, and they're the 6 cores.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing. It's just the same thing.
Which you're right. Al teleports in with almost no gravitas. Literally teleports in, and essentially, like we've dealt with the ganglion. Things seem better, maybe. But then the Vita shows up, which we're like, why? Because we killed Luxar, who was the head of the ganglion, who had been trying to pilot the Vita. I say trying because he hadn't been succeeding very well. But no, his god that he had been talking about has managed to remanifest in this thing, and now he's controlling it. And we find out that's Void and Volitaris, this 5th or 6th continent, which isn't really a continent. Like, I hate that they called it that in the promo material because it's not, and we'll talk about it in a minute. Shows up. It's basically a fucking Star Destroyer, but yellow. And he's challenging you to a survival of the fittest battle. And then the purple things from the start of the game come in. And I'm trying to remember what their name is now.
Just ghosts.
The ghosts, it's ghosts.
It's not a fancy name. It kind of seems like something it should be. They are basically... I know Guillaume has referenced this somewhat obscure bit of Stephen King narrative in the past, that they're essentially like the sort of galactic version of the Langoliers. They just sort of eat they just condemn stuff to non-existence.
Right.
So essentially they completely consume stuff from reality.
Yeah, they don't. It's not an endonym. They don't have one. They don't seem to have consciousness. They basically are they are a natural force, effectively. And we find out they are drawn there by the Ares. And sure enough, the Ares zips into reality to take out the ghosts, because we find out that Al has broken out of the thought prison he's been stuck in like the space between universes, as he describes it. Where that whole like man on the beach scene that happened in this like space between the universes, because apparently Lao got condemned to that void as well. And he basically tells Al, we're stuck here. And Al says, fuck that, I'm out, peace. And the Ares takes him to Mira, which it can do because Al has that, and this is another sci-fi trope of machine that I don't understand has given me the vision of all the cosmos, and it's destroying my brain, so I have to phase it all out. And that's where we find out Al got to see the worlds of Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3. Because
that's one of these. I mean, there is another possible sort of oblique. Well, there's more possible connections, I guess, that are hinted at, but it's that whole thing of like, okay, he's in some sort of nether realm, where between universes, whatever it is, and he can glimpse fragments of all these other ones,
right?
And you know, we have images from other Xenoblade games kind of to communicate that. It's, you know, it's one of these things where it's like, okay, so what you're telling me is that the games are connected, but essentially in the most trivial sense possible, like a sense that doesn't matter, because it's like, well, yeah, it's not even a shared universe. It's different universes. It's shared multiverse.
Well, there is one component that
there are some potential where it's like, well, but they can affect each other, maybe, you know, this kind of thing.
Because there is one component that's super relevant, which is the Sumerians. We finally find out what the fuck their deal was in this chapter, which is they had all this advanced technology. They basically had hegemony over everything. They hadn't created the ganglion. The ganglion actually get created pretty much after their downfall, by a scientist among them who had gotten a hold of, I was going to say the conduit, but it's not the conduit. It's a conduit, because they're still using the power of it to power the Ares, despite the fact that at the same time in the parallel universes, the effects of Xenoblade 1 and 2 are happening. Where I
don't know whether it's kind of like that's the thing. It's a little unclear whether it's true that there are, you know, unique. I mean, just the name of it kind of suggests, you know, obviously a connectivity,
right?
But you know, the whether it's kind of like in one sense there is one of them, because it's like it's an object that is the nexus between universes, between realities, right? Like the Triforce is a little bit like this in some kind of aspects of Zelda lore, when they actually care to, you know, have any kind of continuity between them, in the sense that it's like, okay, so, you know, in one timeline, you know, Link opens the Sacred Realm and Ganondorf nicks the Triforce, right? But that doesn't happen in other timelines, and yet Ganon still gets it anyway.
Right.
So it's kind of like, even though, yes, the Triforce sort of exists somewhat independently in these different realities, what happened to it in one affects all the others. It's so in some ways almost like there's just one at the very center of this kind of web of universes. And so I don't know whether it's like that's meant to be maybe the case with the Conduit, that the Conduit is like, well, you know, to some extent, yeah, you know, they've been accessed from sort of different universes, different points, but it all kind of feeds into one place. You know what I mean?
It exists in all universes, but is effectively one continuum of the same thing. Like
it's you know, in each universe, it's a doorway into its sort of power that then kind of, you know, knits things together maybe somehow. So it's I think there's a little bit of a similar thing with in the X-Men with the Mcron crystal. It's like basically, you know, if it's some sort of nexus between different realities, and like if it gets destroyed in one, it will destroy all realities. Like that's how it kind of connects them together or something. So you have a little bit of a suggestion of that in terms of with the notion that like, oh, you know, the true, you know, kind of big bad that we were, you know, that was being hinted at in the story of the base game.
Right.
Was, you know, kind of imprisoned, but his kind of prison was disturbed by something. It doesn't specify.
It says a shock from another world.
Yeah, and it's like that's vague enough that it isn't really committing to anything. But you could, especially given the sort of, you know, the common iconography, you know, of the Conduit, that cruciform kind of, you know, thing being, you know, so similar to the Klaus experiment from the beginning of the Xenoblade trilogy, of like, okay, the Klaus experiment is also to blame for this. It is literally to blame for everything. I think I've referred to it in the past as the original sin of Xenoblade, and that only became more true with this possibility.
And Klaus is literally divided between two universes of his creation. He created these he took one and split it in two, which is bad. That's a bad thing to do in general. And he's literally like, when you see him in two, he is seeing what is happening in one at the same time, because the 1 and 2 essentially end Klaus at the same temple.
Well, the kind of the more aware, like, kind of original Klaus, if you like, in the world of Xenoblade 2, knows his counterpart is going to die. He's going to, at the hands of the party of the first game. And so he's preparing for the fact that it's over, basically, and then he will die with his sort of other half, essentially. Obviously the other half does not know this,
right?
Because they didn't plan for that.
No,
because they hadn't thought of these things being connected yet.
No, he was busy creating himself in Shulk, because as there's a famous YouTube video that's like Xenoblade's plot explained in 22 minutes, and it's trust no one, even yourself, and it's a drawing of Shulk standing in front of another drawing of Shulk with the gun pointed to his head. It's like, yeah, okay. It's like, no, that's basically the plot. You're right. You summed it up. But I took it more as there is a conduit. Many universes have experienced it. And it will invariably, because of its mysteriousness, fall into the hands of someone in a scientific realm. Because whoever finds it's going to be like, what the fuck is this thing? And they will invariably try to use it to power something. Because it is, as Klaus describes it, perpetual motion. It is infinite energy. Because, I mean, that functionally, like, most of science is developed around how can I either generate energy, capture energy, or convert energy into usable work. Well, this thing does all of those. So invariably, you're going to try to use it for that. And that's essentially what Void, the Samarian scientist, who is essentially banished to the space between universes, tried to use the conduit for. He tried to find a way to leverage it for experiments on energy and stuff, and he ended up creating the Ares with the Ares cores, using its power, and that brought in the ghosts who were summoned by the conduit. Which again,
so it kind of suggests that there's the ghosts are some sort of maybe in like an immune response for the universe. Somebody's fucking with stuff that there shouldn't be. Just clean them out.
Just blow that existence up.
It's all got to go, kind of thing. Yeah. So which makes you want again, like, well, if that were true, wouldn't Klaus's stuff have merited a clean up on aisle 3?
Well, maybe because he blew it up himself. They weren't there to find. Like,
yeah, I suppose so.
Like,
although again, with the original Xenoblade, and then 2 and 3 after, it's kind of like it was discovered in Africa. The conduit in that case, right? So it's like, again, clearly an allusion to 2001.
Oh yeah, no question.
This is Monolith Soft we're talking about. So
I mean, they named themselves Monolith Soft. They weren't subtle.
Yeah. And the conduit is essentially a riff on the monolith concept in 2001, right? It's something that a higher intelligence has left us or planted by us or something, to for some end, right? Which we don't know. Obviously 2001, what we see is the monolith is teaching primitive apes how to hunt and to kill, and then that helps them become the people that we are today. And then we have another phase of that is breadcrumbing, astronauts, in the 20th century, in the 21st century by then, to, actually, find another higher state of being, right? So you kind of assume just on the basis that is the inspiration. That's why you would be finding anybody in the Xenoblade world would have been finding the conduit in the first the world of the first game, is that it's some alien intelligence has left it there for us to do something with it. But I guess it doesn't have to be that, especially now that we're trying to knit some of these things together a bit more, and like it could be some other kind of purpose. But that's I guess the default interpretation. You kind of can't help but look at it that way.
This is where chapter 13 has some difficulty, because then if that is true, all right, so in the world of Xenoblade X, humanity exists on Earth because the Samarians went there and left them there. Samarians were very human. They aren't human. They are different. And they were deposited on Earth as essentially a vault of Samarian DNA, which then raises all kinds of like theoretical questions. But okay, in the because we know the Samarians could jump galaxies or universes, because we know that what? Just lost her name. Elma's race is the same concept. They were a
and just that basically that what happened to Earth is part of a cycle that's happened before,
right.
And Elma went through that cycle essentially, right? Like it's just like we had this whole world and all that, and then it gets completely overtaken by the ghosts, but just completely erasing it from existence after the appearance of that Ares with the kind of forbidden tech, essentially.
But the trick is they don't just, this is the thing that changes in the plot. They don't just destroy the planet. They destroy the whole universe the planet exists in.
Yes, it deletes everything from that. That reality is like deleted from the multiverse or whatever. Like
which means
it is way bigger than just Earth getting blown up or whatever.
Which means right. Elma was also in a different universe from Earth at one point. Which means the Samarians could cross universes before. This is the important thing. Before they had created the ganglion, because we find out that the Samarians didn't create the ganglion. Void created the ganglion after he had been imprisoned in the space between universes, which if you're going to stick him somewhere because they won't execute him because they're fucking wimps.
It could have at least, I mean, again, sort of shades of Zelda. They at least tried to execute Ganondorf in Twilight Princess.
They just failed.
And then when they found that they couldn't, it's like, oh, well, shit, we're going to have to put him in what is essentially Zelda's gap between universes, right? Like that
it's a temple. They put him in a temple oubliette.
They could have tried to kill him at least and buggered it up rather than just refuse to. But I guess it's this concept of it's a fate worse than death.
Right.
They've condemned him to, unending kind of just
mental anguish, mental boredom.
That's the thing. Yeah, exactly. Just boredom really seems like tedium. Like that's what the real punishment.
But the game seems to state, and maybe I'm misinterpreting this, he creates the ganglion after this. While he is, because they come into being, and they worshipped him. Which means that from beyond the void, he's still fucking shit up. At a minimum, he created them before they put him in, but they didn't serve the Samarians, they served him. He becomes their god, and the ganglion go out and cause all kinds of fucking trouble. And I guess replace the Samarians as a race. These implications used to be the Samarians were not a very big race in terms of numbers. So they were crossing universes before they had this thing. But they obviously didn't create it because they didn't understand it, which means they've now implicated that either God created this thing, a divine being, left it and is like, I don't know, fuck it, let's see what happens. This will be cool. Or there's an even higher level consciousness race before the Samarians who put this thing in a million different universes and are like, I don't know, it'll probably be fine. And then immediately they were like, oh, it wasn't fine at all. What did we do? We're so stupid. It starts to get incredulous. Like if the Samarians had created the Conduit, all they had to say was that he created the Conduit. And that the Conduit instantly allowed itself to exist in many universes. Because it was like we wanted to be able to move between universes. Done. Problem solved. Why do they want to do it? Make up a reason. Doesn't fucking matter. And then like he created a thing to let us move between universes and to unite universes temporarily. That's what the Conduit does. And then they could just walk away. They created it. They didn't understand what they were doing. It was a terrible idea. It let the ghosts come in. Problem solved. You solved the problem. You've created it. They've created a Deus Ex Machina of their own that's more powerful than them. The fact that Earth gets one makes total sense because that's where the Samarians stuck their own DNA. So maybe it sought them out, or maybe they put it there so they could stick. Maybe it's there because that's how they put the seed DNA there. Like, yeah, we put one there so we could drop people on it, and then we'd be able to just walk away from them. And that would explain why you could have one, in the other worlds that they touched. But no, they're like, we found this thing too. It was weird. And then we just said, I don't know, put it in a mech. And then all hell broke loose, and we condemned him to death. Like, the idea that Mira's then in its own little pocket universe does make sense, because if that's their home world, and they realized wherever the Ares was, the ghosts come and blow up the whole fucking universe, yeah, you may as well make a tiny little universe just for your home world, and then never let the Ares into it. Just it cannot come here. And they destroy it. Like, the Cimmerians literally destroy the Ares. So it can't go to any more planets. And they fixed the problem. And somehow the design for the Ares got to another one of their created races, who's just like, we should recreate this. Without the warning of, hey, do not recreate this. It's super bad. Love Cimmerians. Like, it's just like, just a little disclaimer. This is not a good thing. Please don't make it. Just take our word for it. And fuck, it all goes wrong immediately. Again. But does that mean that the humans on Earth, I mean, I almost have to use the Marvel, like, Earth 626.
Something to specify Earths, because again, with the Xenoblade trilogy, with the non-X Xenoblade trilogy being an Earth, right? That then Zanza splits in two, but then the
X
Earth at the beginning of X is very obviously like meant to be like our Earth, right? And then that's it's not just blown up, but the universe that it's sat in is consumed entirely.
That's a different Earth. Did that mean the Cimmerians put their species on both
I guess we
Earths?
just call that's Earth X, right? Yeah. That makes sense.
Earth X.
For the person, that's Earth X.
Like, then the implication is the Cimmerians went to many Earths across many universes, and are like, all right, let's put some more of these humans here. Bwop. And at least two of them that we know of have gotten totally fucked up because the Cimmerians did that. Which means, like, they could make infinite Xenoblade games where it's like, here's another Earth the Cimmerians populated. And
yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, we were just concentrating on the eventful, narrative fueling ones where things went wrong. Maybe their batting average is actually very good overall.
Not likely, because they're extinct. Which also raises the challenge of, does that mean there's infinite, like, all right, there's at least two worlds that they've done this on in at least two universes. How many fucking times did they do this? Like, are we going to find out that like half of the species of space are Cimmerian DNA carriers, and they've just fucked it up every time? Just this constant trail of fuck ups.
Well, and then you get the idea, because again, we've talked about this before of, the original, when Xenoblade X came out, kind of felt like it was taking a fair amount of inspiration from, TV shows that were on in the years running up to that. And one of those was the Ort's Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
And, that has the notion of just this sort of endless cycle. Of like, there's obviously the whole notion of like, trying to find Earth, but it's like, it's a different planet. Like the cycle just plays out again and again. The humans create robots. They have war with the robots. They kind of merge back together. They, spread out, colonize a bunch of planets. They all get destroyed. We find another Earth, and it all starts again, and it just plays out. So maybe there's like many, many different iterations of the Cimmerians themselves. Over
that's true
millennia in time, they end up calling themselves the same thing,
and they just fuck it up again
for the same reason why fucking Colonel Ty can sing All Along the Watchtower. It's some sort of cosmic song that just keeps going. Like I assume there's all of these things are possible, because it's the thing with a multiverse is it's an infinite canvas, isn't it? Like across time and reality of like, it can just play out again and again and again in different ways.
Which means effectively there would have been because the Cimmerians could clearly jump universes. That means there would have been a universe where the Cimmerians ran into other Cimmerians from other universes and were like, hey, did you fuck this one up yet? Nah, not yet. All right, we're going to do this one. Can you guys go to another one?
I'd like to think it's like the first time that Hugh Jackman uses the Tesla cloning / teleportation device in The Prestige.
Oh, yeah.
And they look at each other and they're like, okay, which one of us is going to kill the other first?
It's like, hey, buddy, hey, I'm going to blow this universe up. You want to go to a different one? Oh, man, I really had plans for this one. All right, fine. There is like a weird continuous cycle of this. I mean, actually, if you go to Xenoblade 2's cosmology, which I don't want to get into Xenoblade 2's cosmology, it's insane. Like, if you actually sit there and go through the creation myth of Xenoblade 2, it's fucking insane. But it has that infinite cycle in itself. A blade, which keep in mind, a blade in that one is different. It's a core crystal that becomes a life form. That lives for a very long time, eventually grows until it becomes one of the continents. I can't remember the Titans.
They're Titans, right? Yeah, in that one.
Yeah. Eventually, those Titans die, submerged below the clouds, and they are broken up into a collection of core crystals, which is how core crystals reproduce.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, the whole sort of thing with that, again, is, with 2, is the notion of the world is, kind of like the world of Xenoblade 1 was kind of the prime of the 2. It was
Klaus's fantasy world.
It was truly novel.
Right.
Whereas the world of 2 is what was sort of left behind and is trying to reconstitute itself. It's trying to undo the damage that was done, the sort of the stripping that happened to it, which is something like you've seen in Nausicaa, where obviously it's an environmental kind of catastrophe rather than some very sure of himself scientists activating an alien artifact. But the same notion of that even in the middle of some kind of unimaginable man-made catastrophe, nature will try and heal itself and try and get back to something, but it will be in this weird kind of cycle that's new but restorative kind of thing. So it's very much that going on in 2.
It is very funny that Klaus creates the world of Xenoblade 1, and then Shulk, who is basically just Klaus, recreates that world. But that's okay, because he chose not to be its god. But he still created it in the image he wanted, which is weird, because he didn't fix the whole Telethia problem, because he's a fucking imbecile. But Klaus creates this big fantasy world where he gets to be God, and everything's cool and fanciful, and look at how wild this world is. And then the one that Klaus's actual sentient, I remember what happened consciousness is stuck in, is literally built on a trash heap. Because Morthia is literally the thing they float over, and it's literally trash. It's just abandoned, isn't it? Everything that was a lot of the world is just gone. Like it's just a relic. It's just dead, essentially. And then the Cloud Sea is the desert from Nausicaa that's sort of trying to heal it. And that's the one he gets stuck in. That's the one that maintains its omniscience, is consigned to, because no one's allowed to have happiness. Because Xenoblade's world is no happiness allowed. Everyone suffers.
Well, that's the. It's like again, it's a little bit, I guess, like the notion of what's happening to Void in this in Xenoblade X, in that he's sort of punished for his hubris, but it's more. He's essentially punished himself, right? Because it's like, there's a half of him that has to live with the consequences of his actions, and they really do suck a lot. And he has to wait a long time before he is eventually somewhat held accountable in the other world, and that will release him from his sort of bondage of having to try and restore the world that he just poisoned, essentially. Whereas with Void, it's like, well, these fellow men punished him,
right,
and sent him to a non-existent, the Phantom Zone, the Twilight Realm, whatever you want to say.
And it makes sense to a degree with Void. Like, let's say he really does understand the Conduit, and the Conduit exists in all the universes. Well, you're not going to want to send him to a universe, because then he's going to get out. You put him in the space between them where he wouldn't have access to a Conduit. And he didn't. He was stuck there forever. You know who got him out? The fucking Ares got him out. It's like, oh, hey, the thing he created, the thing that has all that like use of the Conduit's power, it goes in there and it brainjacks Al, who we need to talk about Al a little bit. And then it tells Al how to go back to his friends. And then it's able to create for lack of a better word, a wormhole to go to Mira. And he follows right behind him. And that's how we end up with Volitaris in Mira. And this giant, I mean, like I said, it's a fucking Star Destroyer. It looks like one. But inside it is essentially a bunch of floating islands that was his prison, which feels like it's excessive considering he's literally bound in place by spikes.
Yes.
But that's where his body is located, and that he is now making his escape from, or his consciousness really is what's been located there. His body's actually in the Vita. And so like he's essentially trying to transhumanize back into his body, back into the Vita, so that he can actually be living again. But to your point, he also wants to die. Like, he talks about it. He wants to die. But he doesn't.
It's very much like the idea of the cat that's just like, yeah, I'm challenging people until eventually someone is going to be badass enough to kind of put me out of my misery, and that's actually what I want. Is that thing? But
Al going there into that space between, which he gets warped to during the fight, he essentially falls out of the white whale's path as it is jumping between universes to not be destroyed by Earth blowing up. And that's how he ends up in that space. And then by leaving, he drags Void along with him, which results, and them all arriving in Mira brings the ghosts, which dooms Mira's little pocket universe as well. So now everybody's got to leave Mira, and this is where I lose the plot. Because, alright, so Al shows up, everybody's friend Al is here. Al has like an instant charm aura that affects everyone around him, and it's a little bit like when he's not on screen, everybody should be asking where he is, kind of a charm aura.
Yes.
But like almost to the point of, I get the impression that he and Elma had a thing, and that he existed in her world prior to that. But everybody else is just like, hey, it's Al. I love Al. Oh, hey, buddy, how's it been? Oh, Al, you're the best. And it's like, what the fuck is going on with Al? Does Al know everybody, but nobody mentioned him before this? And then the only person Al doesn't know, which goes back to the whole really convenient bullshit, is Cross. Because it's like, oh, who are you? I've never met you before. Which isn't crazy. Except Al was also in on the joke. Like, he knew everything that was happening too. So, like, he might have been aware of the crew. I don't know. It's a little odd. But Al then becomes the protagonist of the story. And, like, there's a weird thing that happens in some anime, shonen anime in particular, where, there's, like, the usually young male lead who's sort of maturing into his natural potential and doing all the shit he needs to do, and he eventually becomes strong enough to challenge whatever the real evil is and win, and everybody else is kind of fallen by the wayside in the process. There's a riff on that trope that's happened in the last 10 or so years, where there's like a mentor character who is essentially the fully grown up hero of an anime we didn't see, who's essentially constantly kicking the new hero in the ass because he's a stupid kid. And you just get these vague glimpses of like, oh, you've already had the hero's journey, and now you're just back around to kick this dumbass kid in the butt every time he's like not doing his job. Okay. Al feels like that. He feels like this hero that's already finished his story who shows back up, and everybody's like, the hero's back. Wow, isn't this great? Hey, you should meet this guy. He was the hero. And Al doesn't really save anybody in chapter 13. Like, he shows up, he helps concoct this insane plan to leave Mira, where they're going to convert the Manon ship into a trans-dimensional jump using the very thing that's drawing the ghosts to it.
Yeah, well, it's like you've already, I guess it's one of those things where you've already, poisoned the well by just having it be there at all means it's been marked for destruction. So you may as well use the benefits of it by
But doesn't that mean the ghosts are just going to find them again? Like, what's the plan here?
that is the problem. I would have thought is like, where's it end? How do you? Because the whole thing is like, yes, you're going to end up defeating Void, right? That's very clear.
Right.
That it's like okay, and this is the ones. There's a few ways in which you look at chapter 13, and it's like, okay, how is this kind of paying things off or, resolving things that were, left unresolved with the original game, and obviously it had very overt cliffhanger, with the, like you said, the whole contradiction of the premise that we had of like, oh, hey, we've got to save this thing because it's got, the physical bodies or, as you later discover, the digital consciousness. But again, guess what? It's all been destroyed, right?
Right.
So, we have to resolve that, and they do, essentially by saying, the digital versions of the consciousnesses of like transferred into the ether somehow,
right.
In Mira, like into
the same way
into
Voids
the
did.
kind of the fabric of the universe itself or whatever. So like that's one thing that it's paying off. But another thing that was a fairly big one was, as you said, like people like Luxar talking about a higher up, a god, someone he served, and it's like, how literally are we meant to take this?
Right.
Is he just religious? Is he delusional, or is it like a tangible character?
And he makes it clear he's talking to that god. He is in, like, if you were to go back to like ancient societies, kings were the people who had direct communication with the gods. Like king and priest were essentially the same word in a lot of cultures at some point. And he's
so it's like
that role.
It's like, to me, that was a big thing that was kind of, when you think of the idea of having more narrative in this definitive edition, that was one of the big things of like, okay, well, who was, like, if it was there, it's presumably there was like a true big bad. Who was it? What was it?
Right.
Let's leave it. And we do, right? And we basically get to beat that as the last boss. We get to kind of beat the big bad of the game. So it's like, in that sense, it is doing, kind of a very natural extension and kind of resolution of things that were in the main game. I guess, the thing with like Al and the ghosts, and again, the ghosts, we've seen them in the destruction sequence at the beginning.
Right.
But that is a whole thing that isn't really, you kind of get the feeling of like, this isn't going to get resolved. This, what I mean? Like, they're not gonna just be like, oh yeah, and actually there's like a ghost queen somewhere, and if we kill that, well then they all die. Like, no, like that is not going to get resolved, and it doesn't. Like, so I guess it's kind of like you have to accept that, yes, we're going to kind of tie off the ultimate kind of power behind the baddies in Xenoblade X is going to go down. But, this other aspect of like, this trans-dimensional, multiversal, like, just force that destroys stuff, you can't really get rid of that. So you just got to kind of accept that could continue to be a threat somehow, and God knows what they would do to other than run. I guess that's all. That is all that can be done.
And that's what they do. They run, and they squeeze literally everyone onto this ship and all of the lifehold equipment for recreating species. And also we get a quest line where somebody's like, no, I don't want to leave Mira. There's too many cool animals here. And it's like, but bro, it's not going to exist. What do you plan to? I've grown to love these animals. But then they're like, okay, we'll just capture the DNA. That'll be fine, right? Oh yeah, that's fine. Okay, bye animals. Get fucked, I guess. So now we have all the DNA of Mira animals too, because fuck it. I guess we're just going to Noah's Ark this shit. But does that mean we also brought, like, the Delphinians and their stupid AI mom along with them? I guess
the computer thing.
I guess we did. I guess we've got AI mom on board too, and her weird race of assassin queens. It's like, this is the worst ship in the world. But also that ship's smaller than New LA, so how did everybody fit on it? And like,
sure, yeah.
Like,
I feel like, I mean, the problem is that it was never that likely to feel that natural.
No,
like this whole thing, like trying to tie it off, I think. Because, I mean, first of all, just the nature of the original Xenoblade X as it existed. It was not obviously an MMO, but it had quite a lot in common with an MMO.
It did.
And I feel like, yes, the cliffhangers were kind of there because like they just didn't have the ability to kind of do a more complete resolution, you know, with the development for that game, the way it was, the schedule and everything. So you just kind of had to have cliffhangers to just kind of leave people wondering. But at the same time, I think the natural state for a game like that is just the idea of like the world keeps going. There's more things to do in it. There's more things to find. You play online and stuff like that. You know, so it doesn't lend itself to the idea of like, okay, here's this thing that just kind of every problem is resolved, or you know, we leaving or whatever it. You know, like it never really kind of felt like that was somewhere that the story for this should go. It just kind of felt like life goes on Mira, right? Like that kind of feels like the natural kind of thing. But I guess with this, it's like, well, it's been 10 years. People, you know, hopefully a lot more people are going to play it this time than they did last time. But equally, there are people that played it the first time with, maybe they've been waiting for a resolution. New players are going to want something that feels more like it's resolved. So we're going to come up with something that has that sense of finality to it that it very much, very explicitly did not have before. But I think inevitably when you do that, it's understandable, but it's never going to feel that natural because that's not the way, it was constructed in the first place. And what you end up with is this idea of like, just getting rid of Mira, right? Which, is kind of, again, it's a bit of a pill to swallow, I think, because it's like the whole game is about mapping this place, understanding this place, essentially recruiting all the different races that have got sucked into this cosmic Bermuda Triangle with you, and then to just say, oh, the end game is it all goes away,
right?
Other than, what you've saved from it. Again, it doesn't feel that natural. I think the one suggestion I would make, if you're going to do this as a way, and I get it, like I said, as a way of like creating a resolution, some sense of finality to it, is I think there should have been a passage of time between, because it's sectored off anyway with chapter 13, right? In terms of like, once you initiate
it's like 8 minutes later.
Like, yeah. Well, that's for me, at least at some point, I don't know where, it should just be like, they've been on Mira for decades now. Oh,
like a real proper time jump.
Yeah, like they've been on Mira and like they've kind of, they've done it essentially. Like all the things that you've been doing in the game to understand Mira, to develop it, to like, again, you have better relations with all the different peoples that are there and all that. It's all happened. Like it's like time has passed, and the problem is if you're going to fully realize this concept, it'd be way more trouble, than it's worth.
You have to make so many new characters and
new characters, new cities. Presumably, it's like, well, we're not just going to stay in New LA, but we're going to build actual cities from the ground up at some point, right? For this concept to work. So it's too much for what you took. Again, the limited resources that there would have been allocated to this is beyond the scope. But just from a narrative point of view, I think it would have felt more acceptable to kind of say, to draw a line under, like, okay, we did make Mira a home. We were there for a long time. And then this happened and we had to leave. Like, rather than we're just like in the middle of that process. We're at the beginning of it, really. And now it's like, nah, actually, gotta go. It just, it feels it's too whiplash for me of like, to sit very well as the resolution to that story. And I wonder how that feels for people who didn't play it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And now we're coming to it and just to experience it in a much more condensed way. Do they feel that whiplash maybe even more than we do? Or does it seem more natural because they haven't had the passage of time? It's an interesting question.
I think the other challenge that I almost wonder if where they cut it off when they did is because they recognized that they have to resolve the story in a way that makes sense. But because the ghosts didn't really have a plot, they could have done anything with them. They didn't have to be universe-destroying machines. They could have very easily just been like because how they told the story originally, Earth was just like a victim in the fight. Like the fight came to Earth, but that doesn't.
It was caught in a crossfire. That was
Right.
That was the impression that you're left with. Is like, no, well, there's these alien factions are warring, and they've just decided it's happening on our patch, and we're going to get blown up in the collateral damage.
By chapter 12, we know that's not true. We know explicitly the Ganglion were coming to Earth to kill all humans because the Samarian DNA will kill Ganglion. Now why? But that is then thrown into chaos because we now find out that Void created the Ganglion after he was already on the outs with the Samarians. So why would he create a race that reveres him as a god and make them weak to Samarian DNA? Because, like, that would be because obviously he's creating them probably to cause trouble for Samarians because he's not happy.
As a revenge, as nuisance at the very least for the people that have decided his experiments should stop.
So it doesn't really make a ton of sense. So, all right, setting that aside, I wonder if they were just like, like we've created a problem now with this plot, and it's really hard to finish how to unwind it. Maybe we just stop here and we just leave it as a mystery, and then we never have to worry about it. And then Nintendo's like, we want this game to end, and they're like, fuck, okay.
It's one of these things. Like it's a luxury. I've talked about plenty of times with the endings of both the seasons of Twin Peaks in the 90s, where it's like, well, we don't even know whether we're going to get renewed, so just throw every cliffhanger in there, and if God forbid we have to come up with an explanation, we'll cross that bridge when we got to it. So it's like, yeah, they probably did, make use of that luxury a little bit with the thought that they may well never have to be obliged to, create any kind of follow-up. And then they've, have to lie in that bed,
right?
A decade later, and probably anything was going to struggle to knit it all together with high degree of consistency and proper continuity and internal logic, whatever you want to say. So it was always going to be tough. But yeah, I feel like this doesn't it feels like it could have been better in some, you know what I mean? Like it just maybe, again, it's easy to say this when you're not thinking about all the kind of practical steps that would be required to make it work. But it's like, with the Mimiasome concept and all that, if you were going to set it decades in the future of where, the base game kind of leaves off, the characters could still be largely the same.
Right. Well, the human characters could be.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's the biological characters for the other races and stuff. You've got a little bit more of a problem with, but at least you've got something there that could explain why the core cast is, pretty much the same all those years later, kind of thing. But just, I guess the thing about that is it just maybe even before, you have to blow the whole thing up, if that's what you really have to do, to kind of say, that's how we're going to resolve this. It would have been like a kind of maybe a sense of reward in a way, you know what I mean? Of just like all the effort that you're doing in the base game of making this a home and bringing the different peoples together, have it pay off in this glimpse of that kind of dream realised, I think maybe people might have responded a little bit more favourably to seeing that, you did it, you know what I mean? Like the stuff you did in the base game created this, kind of advanced home on New LA before you then go and destroy it.
Yeah.
But at least you would have got to see that rather than it's like, well, we survived one crisis. Oh, guess what? Now we've got a way bigger one that's just going to destroy this like immediately after.
It is disheartening to be like, all that work I did, completely fucking useless. Cool, thanks. I do want to touch on Al a little bit. Like we talk about how Al is instantly revered by everyone he meets. which is true, but Al himself is kind of interesting as a character. Not so much like with the scenario they put him in.
Well, I guess coming back to my thing with Adam again, it feels like it's an imperfect comparison. But, and again, with what you said about the notion of, like, this is a guy who's, like, you know, his legend has already been established elsewhere. You're just oblivious to it.
Right.
You know, it was in, you know, a show you didn't see or whatever. Like, there is very much that. But then there is this thing of, like, a bit like Adam in that he is a dork as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like he's this sort of legendary sort of character seemingly in the minds of the other characters.
But they never wrote down his flaws.
But like the whole, the catchphrase, the how's it Poppin thing or whatever, like it does kind of feel like they also want, they're kind of trying to do two things at once. Is like, with the way the other characters respond to him of just like, oh, this is an important character, this is an admired character, this is, you know, a capable character, all these things.
This character is significant, to use RFN parlance.
Absolutely. But at the same time, like, try and like comedically undercut it a little bit by sort of, this character is a weirdo and a dork as well. Like, so I don't know whether it's entirely successful in on either front, you know, and the sort of combined effect of it is not necessarily entirely successful, but I think that's what they're trying to do, is like do a bit of both at once. I
did really like with Adam that, you know, every time we heard about Adam, it was always in reverent tones. Oh, Adam is amazing. Except when Mithra was talking about Adam, where she was just like, he was a jerk. And you find out later that they just had a whole thing. Like, when we actually get to see them interact, like, they had a whole thing. It was probably some of that they talk about it, like the quasi-romance thing that they had going on, because they did talk about Blades and humans had relationships and all that stuff. But also, he was a dork, and she doesn't really suffer dorks. And so there is a certain amount of that was the interplay. And she just sort of carried that, like, he annoys me, all the way to what was the modern era of Xenoblade 2. Yeah,
I'm not sure you really have someone that treats Al the same way.
So,
I don't know whether it might have been better if they did. So
Elma does a little bit. Like, Elma, she clearly likes Al a lot. And that, you know, he constantly refers to her as princess. I guess they're implying they may have had a relationship at some point, but like, she does kind of call him out on his bullshit occasionally. But
then again, like, she is like such a ridiculously high profile character.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, she's definitely got standing to say.
She is his peer.
Anything, basically. She's single-handedly responsible for anyone still being alive at all. So it's like she could say anything. She could just, like, you know, kick him in the face if she wanted, and then everyone would have to just accept it. So I think she's treated him quite politely, mildly.
I took it as she's genuinely more or less likes him, but even sometimes she's like, okay, you're being a bit of a dork. Your character actually can do that, because almost any time he acts like a dork, you have a response that's like, you're a fucking dork. But the one terrible exception.
Oh,
Trevor, which one is that?
It's the very end, isn't it, where it doesn't give you a choice.
Oh, that's right. How's it poppin'? And he's just like, yeah, you're right.
It only gives you the what. It's like, we're not even giving you the illusion of choice anymore. You have to play along with this guy's dopey routine.
But the
gun has been placed to your head.
Actually, Tatsu does call him out on it a little bit. He's like, he basically something like, these don't make any sense when they do it the first time in front of him. And Lynn's like, no, it's fun. And then that's all Tatsu needs. Tatsu's like, Lynn likes it, I will do it. So I'm not necessarily convinced Tatsu's bought in. He's just like, okay, she does it, I do it. But what amuses me is your character, like, when it's just those two characters alone, when it is Al and Cross, and they've gone off and they're doing something, you do get a side of Al that he doesn't show anybody else. And this actually reminds me a little bit of what is in Breath of the Wild about Link, what Zelda writes in her journal. of like when he's around other people, he always has to put on this brave face, and he tries to be stoic so everybody knows that he's strong and he's unbothered. He's in a great shape. He can continue on this thing. But when it's just the two of them, he's like, yeah, I'm tired. I'm very tired. It's stressful doing this shit. And you do get that from Al when it's just the two of you by themselves. Al's like,
Is it the food quest?
Yeah, like Al wants to have some fucking pizza. And I'm like, Al, there's pizza fucking everywhere. But no, apparently the man ate all the goddamn pizza, which, again, the pizzas come back around. So Al has to go, you and Al go collect ingredients to get pizza. And Al's like, well, I don't know what passes for cheese on Mira. We'll just have to figure it out together. And, like, he wants the pizza because he's fucking gassed. He needs like, they basically said he needs like the comfort food element right now. And so you get a bunch of fucking pizza, and he goes and eats like 20 pizzas because he's a fucking idiot. And he's like, boy, my stomach can't handle eating that much food anymore. And it's like, asshole, you ate 20 pizzas. You made 900 of them. No, you could never Why? Why are you like this? And you actually get lots of opportunities as Cross during that whole quest to be like, what the fuck? Why do we need this much pizza? But he does play an important role, which is, yes, he did the big self-sacrificial fight that the anime hero has to do to save the white whale. He also brought the Deus Ex Machina back into play, which would have been better if he didn't do that, but he did do it. But the whole time we keep hearing, why does a human body, because Al's also not a Mimiasum, why does it take a human body to pilot it? I don't know. That just must be what she likes, is his answer to why the Ares needs a true human pilot. Except it doesn't, because it turns out Cross can also pilot the Ares, which goes back to the question of, did they create a Mimiasum just to have someone who could pilot the Ares that's not the guy they thought died? But Cross is essentially forced to do the exact same thing as everybody's fleeing Mira. Like, go out there and fight the entirety of the Ghost by himself to give the ship enough time to escape. And do the whole self-sacrifice thing and all of that. And everybody thought Cross died. I thought Cross died. I thought that would be a way to end this fucking game. Be like, Cross is fucking dead.
No, if we're doing resolutions, it's an obvious one.
Right. But Cross didn't die. Cross manages to get back to the ship and whatever. But, like, it's the exact same playbook, which goes back. I had already put in my head of, like, is he the protagonist of an anime we didn't get to see? And, like, he's pushing Cross to now be the protagonist? Because at every point in the game up to now, in Xenoblade chapters 1 through 12, Cross is acting as Elma's second. Why Elma decided to bring this character who has no military experience of note into her elite military unit, we don't really know. Like, we had some hints. We talked about them earlier. And if that Cross is what what it is implied he or she might be, Elma would know about it. But this is the time where Elma steps back because Al now has the tool that they all need to worry. Like, I've seen people complain that Elma steps back, and I get it to a certain degree, but the reality of the situation is there's not much Elma can do here. Elma can't pilot the Ares. She doesn't understand how the Ares works. She didn't make it. She doesn't really understand the technology being used to build the warp drive on the Manon ship. The Manon are governing that. Like, it's really not her. Like, this is the first time where she's really not empowered to solve the problem. Her only job is to go lead the team that's going to go strike at Void. And so, while that's important, it's really not what most of Chapter 13 is about. That's really only the last third of it. The first...
Yeah, it's interesting, the kind of the different chapters. Obviously, the first two parts, you kind of... Essentially, it's like a sort of... Victory lap is very much not the right phrase, given what's happening, but it's the last tour of Mira, essentially, before you're going to be saying goodbye to it. You're going to be going to the new area, and it's going to get destroyed. So you've got that component, which obviously it does feel a little bit like, narratively, that's what you're talking about.
Right.
In terms of that, how that's delivered and the play experience, it does kind of feel like, okay, we've got some exposition that we've got to get through. and we're going to just pepper, kind of quests in the world that, we've already established, in there to sort of break up and offer the platform for the exposition. It's pretty kind of utilitarian stuff.
Definitely.
A lot of that in those first two chapters, and then the third bit that feels much more like, okay, this is the point. This is what we've been setting up. We've got a unique area. We've got the big bad to beat, and we've got the resolution of are they going to successfully escape the destruction of that universe and what comes after that. So it feels like that's very much the main course, both from a gameplay point of view and a narrative one. I guess it's just, especially when you're trying to embed it with the existing narrative and the lore. And then, you're trying to make some connections to, bleak ones maybe, but, some connections with the other games and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's just they gave themselves, they felt like they had to have a certain amount of exposition, but then it's not literally just going to be text, is it? That's not the way that the narrative has been delivered the rest of the game. So, you've got to do that with the sort of delivery through the quests. And again, it doesn't feel like it kind of naturally flows from the rest of the game. Because as we've talked about many times with Xenoblade X, a lot of the narrative that you remember, a lot of the things that land the most are almost kind of incidental, right? It's just you're running quests and these quest lines like spin out and cascade into like weird places, and it's just kind of quirky thought experiments and kind of world building,
short
and all
stories
that.
in a universe, basically.
Capsule sort of tales. It doesn't really even have to be part of the bigger struggle, the big, the existential threat or whatever. That's all this is, basically, isn't it? Apart from, you said, you get some character builders that with Al, that food quest we already talked about and stuff, but it's very much more like, we've got to get to the point, and it's more exposition dumps, and it's kind of less natural kind of feel to it than just like we've got to get narratively from point A.
We have to hit our spots. You know what I remember from TNG? Masks. Fucking masks. What is by far the stupidest fucking episode of goddamned anything in the world. Why? Because it's the stupidest goddamned episode. Because we get to see this man put on a mask and dance around like a fucking idiot. It's amazing. Like, so much of Xenoblade Chronicles X is masks. I would guess a third of that game by content is Jean-Luc Picard wearing the mask of an ancient queen and dancing around on the ship of the Enterprise. It's so fucking stupid. So when it does go, like, we're going to go narrative heavy for a while, it does feel a little odd, you're right. But, like, I get why Alma has to step back a little bit in that chapter. Like, really, her team's...
Well, and that, it does make sense that in the context of the story they're trying to tell, but equally, I wonder, especially again for those players that didn't play it the first time, that are just experiencing this in a kind of evenly paced kind of first fresh experience, whether that might add to the whiplash a bit, because again, Elma is just he's essentially the protagonist, isn't she? She is you're just like kind of like a
your party member.
Sounding board, you know what I mean? Like you're just there to like witness how she's gonna solve the problem. Essentially, she's the super capable, knows everything, knows where all the bodies are buried. She's in on everything.
She's the one who buried them.
Yeah, like she is the character. And she is also in, the Xenoblade. She is the foreign blade,
right?
Because she's not from Earth. Like she's so much to the game, and then like she's not as much. She's a bit of a passenger all of a sudden. She was driving the bus. Now she's sitting, somewhere towards the middle of the bus anyway. And that is, I would imagine, even maybe more so for those fresh players, a bit of a whiplash but moment. So I wonder how well it works.
I took it more as this. So Al, we know that Al was basically had trans universal knowledge jammed into his head. So the Al that we get by the time he comes back to, or by the time he comes to Mira, is arguably not human anymore. Because of the amount of, like, he talks...
He's not the same person, I guess, is probably very much we could say. He's not...
Right.
Obviously, his experiences are there, but he's got all this other stuff in his head now.
Yeah.
And I get to go back to the Lao thing that we did touch on that, but obviously, yeah, they kind of they had to follow that up.
Right.
Because that was the other kind of like...
It's in the post-credits.
Yeah, it was the post-credit scene of, oh, hang on a minute, who is this, sort of hooded figure? How is Lau still around? So you've got to follow it up. You've got to. And this is one where, more so, I'd say, than the, how can the consciousness persevere despite the computer being destroyed? Or this is the one where it kind of feels more like, yeah, we don't have a great answer for that.
We had to do it.
And we're just going to kind of sidestep it as much as possible. I mean, one thing I will say is, as a visual metaphor or whatever, the fact that he was sort of washed up on a beach, I mean, that is something that is associated with death a lot. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Of like, you have gone...
to the other shore.
You've washed up on the shore of another place.
Right.
Beyond this life kind of thing. So it's not like totally... no kind of connection you can make there, but I think more so the idea of the hooded figure being Al is like, there's no way this is what you thought. This definitely kind of feels like you've done some gymnastics to try and say, okay, yeah, that's how we can kind of. We have to touch on it. We will touch on it, and then let's move on.
Yeah,
as quickly as possible.
But I like the idea to a certain degree that this now trans-dimensionally informed Al has come through, and he understands everything. He can truly explain what the ghosts are. He can explain how the transportation works. He can explain the dimensional jumping. He doesn't want to do that because that's not who he is. Al's man of action. But he's got to stop and deal with this shit. And so Elma's team basically gets assigned busy work for 2/3 of, like I say, it's the tour of Mira, but it's so beneath them considering what they just did. They just fucking destroyed the ganglion. Like, this is like the busiest ass busy work in the world. And they're in all the meetings because they can't be cut out of the meetings. They're too important. Because you've also at that point of like, yeah, Elma's super famous, whatever. Lynn was already famous because Lynn was, the daughter of famous scientists, all that stuff. Presumably Cross, just through proximity to all the shit that Elma has done, has also gained a certain amount of like, oh, people revere what this character was accomplished. What's weird is Al comes in, knows everybody in the room except Cross, zeroes in on Cross, and is like, this is the one I'm going to take with me. And this is the one who I'm going to start prepping to take over, because the very last fucking scene of this game, which is where our end music is going to come from, is essentially Cross going and doing the exact same thing that Al does without the...
That we're told Al did. And it's kind of like you get to see it for real, essentially, by actually, it happening, contemporaneously now, rather than like, oh, well, actually, at the start of the game, that event we saw, well, this was what was happening. And I guess that's the thing, it kind of... Because they could have, gone and, added more in, I guess,
right.
Adulterated, the earlier scenes of how it was told and all that. But they didn't do that. A, probably would have been more work. But B, it would have diminished the impact of when you actually do it, right? That's the thing. Because the real thing is you're going to do what he already did the first time. It wouldn't have that same
without
impact.
The Ares. Well, that's the other thing.
This is just sure, yeah. No, but it's like to have that scene kind of play out again. I guess it just, I don't think. I think it's kind of. It works better this way in terms of okay, there's this kind of cool thing that kind of, that happened, in the background of what you've already seen, but you haven't really seen it. Now it's something so very similar is going to, and you will see it kind of participate in it more this time. And
we talk about characters going on arcs, regardless of if you think Cross is a created thing that the Blade organization created to have a hero in a box, or if it's literally just a memory lost character that they lost all the records on for whatever reason, as illogical a statement as that is, but whatever. Or maybe they didn't lose the records, but nobody bothered to just like take 10 minutes to look them up so Cross had them. I don't know. And they went on the arc anyway. At some point, the hero of the scene has consistently recognized that Cross is a special character, but we never got to see that moment happen. Now, we got to see it in that Cross is the only one who seems to know how to use overdrive, not like an idiot, but that's because the rest of the party can't fucking use overdrive to save their life. But it's the Cross, like, Elma puts Cross in her party for no good reason. Like, there's no reason for that. Elma's party is doing elite level shit, and it's like, we're going to put a child and an unknown in here. It'll be fine. Thumbs up. And then Al, when he arrives, instantly zeroes in on Cross and is like, this is the person I'm going to have my philosophical conversations with. This is the person that I'm going to do the passing of the torch to at the end. It's like, this is Cross. Like, Elma had her moments for the first, 75% of the game. Al gets chapter 13, and then that very last moment is, okay, now this is Cross's time. This is Cross is the hero of the story now. Your character finally got to be the hero, where everybody goes, or everybody does the when he's not on screen, people should be asking where Cross is moment. And it literally, we get to see everybody in mourning, which is the most insane part of it, because you land and they're still in mourning and you get to talk to them. It's so stupid. I love it so much. Like, oh, you're here. Yeah, idiot. Didn't you see me come back? What the fuck are you talking about? And it just is the implication that there is some like fucking paranormal shit as to how Cross made it back, because it didn't seem like Cross just caught up. Like, it feels like there's some intervention.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. We get a little bit, the very end. I mean, one thing that I think, God, when you think about who's making this game, Monolithsoft, like, I mean, I haven't played everything they've ever made, in particular, Xenogears and Xenosaga.
They like being self-referential.
A certain amount of, kind of linkages back to with, as well as, the numbered Xenoblade games
right
in play, I understand. But when we finally get to the point of, like, the man on chip is going to warp, not just, away from Mira, but, out of that universe that's getting consumed. We get Beyond the Infinite from 2001. We get the where he warps away from Jupiter to wherever the hell that goes, to where the, sort of next level of life, sort of wise aliens or whatever is it another dimension? Is it a wormhole to some other part in space? I did read the novel, but it was so long ago I can't remember if they talk about that or not. But I mean, they finally got to do that in a Xenoblade game anyway. I don't know whether they've done it in one of their other ones. So I imagine that's like a big box checked for that on their to-do list, like with the series. They've had to do a Beyond the Infinite sequence, and they did it. And in that we had the bit where Al sort of sees his dead sister. Is it? It's a relative. So there's definitely some notion of the idea that this sort of nexus, the gaps between universes, realities, or whatever, and this fabric that sort of can contain consciousnesses. It's tying into a concept of an afterlife as well. I think it's fair to say, they are kind of going there, and therefore, kind of by extension, is there some sort of, hand of fate, the cosmos, God, whatever you want to say, making sure that Cross, gets back and survives. I think it's, in that context, it's probably a fair interpretation. Yeah,
because like, this is, it would have been very easy to just go, all right, gone, bye. Whee! But they didn't. Like, they brought that, they had their moment. They were brought back almost from the dead. Like, there's almost a messianic component to it in that respect. But we got to see that like kind of loop back around and like, there we are. We didn't talk about, we got deep into the plot. We didn't really talk about Volitaris. It's Volitaris? I can't remember how they pronounce it. Volitaris, I think is how they say it.
Volitaris or so, is it?
Yeah, Volitaris. It's fine. Like it's visually very different from anything in X. It's very
that was what was nice about it for me. It was just the feeling of like Mira's so weird and wonderful, but then it's like, okay, how do we have something that feels very much not of Mira when it itself is quite an eclectic landscape, right? So we have something that's really bizarre, like it's surreal. Essentially, it almost feels like it could be, you know, the prison of the mind or something, which is to some extent what is happening to Void. So, like, it's a kind of physical manifestation of that. The one problem I had with that is that there should have been unique enemies in it that fit it. That was the problem. And again, we're getting into that phase of like, that's really easy to say, is a lot more difficult to realise within the budget of and general scope of this project of a definitive edition for this game at the arse end of the Switch's life. So yeah, that to me did limit like how unique it felt, and you know, to some extent, you know, even the gameplay of like, well, you know, just interacting with these enemies again.
Yeah, it's also the only part of the game that feels more like a level. Like because it is so self-contained, and there really is like a progress to it, at least until you manage to get the skells back.
I felt like there was, I don't know whether full circle is quite the right phrase in this circumstance, but there was something circular and kind of amusing about the fact that there was, it felt like in a way it was a sort of tribute to Xenoblade X's contribution to Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
Because it was a miniature Breath of the Wild scenario where it's kind of like you can go to the end whenever you like, but it's like you've got this area to explore, and you know, you can find stuff and do stuff that's going to make it easier to win the final scenario. You know, and it's kind of like, just like you said, what you've got to do is find the, you know, you get kind of breadcrumbed along in terms of finding, getting your skells back, and then at that point it's really quite open. Right. It's just like, okay, you've got all the people in your party, you know, that have been in your party at some point. They're out there somewhere. You go and find them. And again, I think that works better because they made the affinity easier, because I spent the time getting the affinity maxed out with all those people. I kind of wanted to find them more. Right. It made that part of it more compelling, right? And just, it's a different kind of exploration because it's so based around the flying skell. Right, whereas, you know, much of the game is not necessarily based around the idea you'll be flying there. There's a, you know, a limited amount of that's true. And then even the possibility of having the jet powered, you know, one where you can get around much faster. So, and just the fact that it is totally foregoing any sense of like organic geography. It's just weird, and you know, kind of finding nooks and crannies where, you know, someone, you know, a party member might be found and all. I quite liked, you know, those aspects of it.
Same.
And then the final boss itself kind of balanced out relatively well for me, because I think I had not created, even I certainly didn't do this the first time to any full extent, but even compared to that, I did not have skells that just killed everything automatically. They weren't that powerful. I hadn't put, it's like everything was balancing out all right. And so, you know, I was putting money into upgrading skells and weapons and gear, whatever, but it was never like, okay, let's really drill down into this and make the killing machine. I didn't do that, and yet, you know, kind of, so the final boss itself played out, and it was just like a fight you felt like you could lose. It was no walkover,
right? But
I didn't have to like retry it a bunch of times either. It just kind of played out pretty much perfectly, by total fluke probably, but that's just the way it worked out.
I smoked him pretty good, but he was still able to put up resistance, even though I was definitely stronger than him. There's some smart decisions in his moveset that were able to destabilize me, so the destruction machine couldn't get fully operational. To borrow Star Wars parlance, It's like I would get ready to just blast it, and then he would do one of his disruptions, and I'm like, fucking asshole. All right, fine. And I'd have to kind of reposition myself and get set up again, and then eventually try to get the thing off. But like, I like that Void. I never got the implication that Void was explicitly evil when he was just a scientist. Like, that came later, but I guess that, again, that's a Klaus parallel, where it's like, Klaus...
Oh, yeah. No.
Klaus was made
Absolutely.
evil by the thing that he did.
It's you know, it's always the hubris thing, right?
Right.
That's what it seems like Monolith like to go for the most. It's not that it's like someone that with expressly evil intentions, but you know they're willing to do stuff that they really shouldn't be. And yeah, it's certainly obviously especially with Klaus, because they split him in two, as we've made the comparison before. It's kind of like Wind Waker Ganondorf versus Twilight Princess Ganondorf. One of them has actually lived it and kind of regretted what they've done,
right?
And the other one, it just thinks that they're powerful by divine right.
Right.
And they're more of an arsehole. But, not necessarily entirely evil. Pretty less evil than Ganondorf in both cases, really. But, yeah, with Void, obviously, it's a bit more kind of, we don't get as much insight, it feels like, into exactly what they're like. We just kind of know what they've done. And then, because of the nature of their punishment, they're kind of, vengeful and resentful or whatever, but that's just because obviously they were punished for what they did in the first place, so we don't really know that they had the worst of intentions with what they were actually trying to achieve when they were tapping into the conduit in the first place.
Right. All right, we've gone way longer than I thought we were gonna go. We're at 2.5 hours.
Well, it is what it is. It's, like I said, it's been even though, like I said, it's not exactly the kind of it's clearly not some sort of like, oh god, this is so natural, like, this just feels like they're picking up where they left off, and it's exactly, they had it all planned out and they just executed the plan, and it doesn't feel like that.
No,
it's not how it happened. And I don't think it even for anybody, that it is going to feel that way. But it is still kind of, to whatever extent, people feel like it's successful, it's the culmination of a 10-year kind of, sort of journey of sorts. And, I think it's, in some ways, I think it does some important stuff for, providing some kind of closure and feel of certain gaps that were there that needed to be. On the other ways, it does kind of feel like it's too much too quickly, and things are not paced out the way they are in the regular game, and it just feels a bit forced, and kind of you kind of wonder exactly where they're going with it. I guess the very, very end, like, okay, where have they arrived at that point?
Xenoblade Chronicles X2 2083.
After they've gone beyond the infinite and come to a different universe from where they've been before, but that obviously leaves a lot of possibilities. I think it's fair to say, they've arrived at another kind of Earth-like planet. But so it's like, what is this? Have we had to add the kind of wrench of saying goodbye to Mira because basically they're lining up, maybe possibly, or at least want to leave it open for the possibility of like, hey, we're gonna carry over maybe some of these characters, but have the same concept as the original X, where it's like you're colonizing a new world, essentially.
We know there's at least...
Is that why we went through all these hoops to get to that place?
We do know there's at least 2 Earths. What if they just ended up on another fucking Mira? It'd be so infuriating.
It's just, this is just the alternate universe Mira. It's pretty much the same.
They land in the same spot and they're like, oh god damn it! There's just a giant Gonzalez standing there. Shit! These fucking monkeys! God damn it!
Just a the giant statue of just basically the Statue of Liberty, but in its hand is the pizza box. You maniacs!
God damn it. I just like the idea if they land and the first thing they see is one of those like 90-foot tall gorillas. There's like, son of a bitch. God damn it.
Anywhere, all the different universes, there's always going to be a bloody giant gorilla.
All right, let's start making pizza. Fuck. Well, on that, we're gonna call it on this episode because we have a not so giant gorilla to talk about as well.
Certainly not that big.
No. Which would have been an interesting power up though. So on that, we're going to end music, and I'd mentioned it. This is an interesting situation. This song doesn't have an official name because they've not released an album for Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition in Japan. They released one for X, but they didn't release one for XDE.
And of course, I guess the analogous situation is like Xenoblade Definitive Edition got a soundtrack, a separate release, didn't it?
Yes.
But I guess the thing about that is not only would it have had new music, like for Future Connected and stuff, but it was reorchestrated.
Correct.
All of it. So, like, it was more justified, I guess. Like, it wasn't just, oh, yeah, you know, that Xenoblade release that already existed. Well, here's a few extra songs on top. Like, everything was different.
Right.
Even if, you know, some cases it's more subtle than others. Like, but, yeah, like, so there's kind of precedent for it, but it's not quite the same situation.
Right. So we don't know what the song's called. It was basically stripped from the game code by people who are just scrubbing the game. It doesn't have a name, which is an interesting situation. Like, I don't know what I'm going to put in the credits for this one. Unnamed song.
Yeah, I've just kind of seen it referred to as, like, cutscene BGM.
Yeah.
You know, because, I get that. That's what it plays in a particular cutscene, and it's in the background. So, I mean, that's
I've heard,
safe enough.
I've seen people call it Al's theme, but that seems totally wrong because Al's not the one doing shit in this scene. I guess it could be Cross's theme because this is the first time Cross gets to lead the action, but I don't know. It doesn't have a name. Like, I'm sure there's an internal name, and we might get to find out what it is one day, but right now we don't know what it's called. But this is the song that plays in the aforementioned scene. They are trying to escape Mira. They have already defeated Void, and the ghosts are destroying the universe behind them, and Cross has to make the choice on how to make it. Basically, all the skells are ordered back to the ship, but Cross recognizes that's not going to work and continues to handle business, making the ultimate sacrifice. So, on that, it is time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.